I flinched when he shouted, then looked up with an alarmed face, not because I was actually surprised, but because I was supposed to be a timid girl. Just an honest day's work farming sympathy here. Nothing to see people, move along. He wasn't yelling at me. I turned around to check what he was complaining about. He was watching the large TV at the lobby through the glass door of his office, the news showing the ongoing protests at Marshall Avenue. "I apologize, miss," said Harold or Harley, some name starting with an H. He had introduced himself to me, but I didn't care enough to remember his name. I also didn't take note of his rank and title, although he obviously had a position in whatever department this was, and one of Johann's superiors. These people, he shook his head again. Just makes your blood boil, you get what I'm saying? I think so. Did I startle you? Yeah, a bit, I said with an embarrassed grin. I showed him a line on the questionnaire I intentionally messed up with some scribbles. "I'm sorry, I jumped when you yelled. Can I get a new one?" "Don't worry about a small thing like that." He placed a correction tape in front of me. "Know how to use this? You kids still use these things?" "Yes, sir. I do. Thank you." "Good, that's good," said Officer H something with an appreciative nod. "I thought you kids were all computers nowadays." He went back to his tirade against the protesters. "They're just making it worse. In times like these, everyone should calm the hell down." He slammed his palm on the wooden table, causing me to really mess up my writing this time. He didn't notice, so I didn't make a big deal out of it. He continued his spiel as if the people on TV could hear him. I nodded every time he paused to shake his head while dutifully filling up the forms requiring various info about me. "Look at that rabble," he said, waving his hands. "You got a good head on your shoulders deciding to come here instead of going to HQ, miss. Whole downtown's utter nonsense. We'll forward everything to them as per procedure anyway." To the bid. Witnesses and other persons of interest related to the Adumbrey investigations, which I supposed included me, a resident of the condo-turned-hellhole, were advised to go to the LEPD main office for processing. Of course, I was going to come forward. Hiding would just make it worse. But I wasn't going to their headquarters. Johann wasn't working there, and that place was crawling with bid agents who had taken charge of the investigation on the 2 Adumbrey attacks. This Hackett or Hayden guy also mentioned it was super crowded at their head office, with all the leads being pursued and tons of people brought in for investigation and testing, and now this whole protest thing happening. "Yes, sir," I said. "Thank you so much for your help. It would have been bad if Dean and I, my friend, were stuck there. I have a class in about a couple of hours I can't miss." Dean had a class later, not me. I just told a teensy-weensy white lie so I would look the part of a harmless student, at the same time subtly hinting I had something important to do later to set a timer on this whole thing. Some guys scratch that, most guys would be more helpful towards Dean than me. She had a huge advantage in most social situations involving men. Not so much with women because they'd view her as a threat. Basic biology, I think. I forgot all the science shit I learned in school. It had been a few years since I had a science class. And I only took those during undergrad because they were required units. Officer H something's case was different. Compared to the other colleagues of Johann who swarmed around Dean when he introduced her, he didn't pay much attention to her. I also noticed this Harvey or Hiram had pictures of, presumably, his teen daughters, 3 of them, on his table: graduation pictures, vacation pictures, the usual dad stuff. Going for the helpless daughter vibe was clearly the way to go for me. I was 4 years, going 5, past being a teen, but if those 30-year-old actresses can play teenagers in cringy romance movies, then I could do it too. Didn't hurt that I actually looked like a high schooler. Officer H something occasionally referring to me as a kid meant I correctly read his personality and my adjusted face was working smoothly. "We'll just be quick here," he said. "We don't want you missing your classes." Amidst class is money thrown to the winds, that's what I always tell my girls. I'm saving for their college tuition. I imagine tuition fees at EFU are not cheap in the slightest. Yes, sir. I'm lucky I got in with a scholarship. Not true. I did have discounted tuition because of my high scores on the entrance exams. I suppose it was still technically a scholarship, just not what people usually think when they hear that term. I wasn't some genius, award-winning student who was a member of tons of organizations. Nonetheless, it did impress Officer H something as I intended. A begrudging smile broke the grumpy mask he wore. Seems like you're a bright girl. I do hope when you become a lawyer, you work for the government instead of going private. There's more money there, I get it. Money does buy happiness, contrary to what people say. I'll be happy if my girls won't need student loans when they go to a good university, maybe even to a Lois University, like you. But there are some kinds of happiness money can't buy. The happiness of people you'll help if you work for the government, for example. Or the general happiness of the city you're helping to keep safe. Many people take normalcy for granted these days. It's only when something bad happens, like now, that people remember the happiness they felt when everything was safe. And I'm sure we'll need bright girls like you to help keep the people safe. That's inspiring, sir, I replied. I always wanted to work in the public sector. Maybe you can work with us here, or maybe with the bid. Yes, sir, I replied noncommittedly. I bent down to finish the questionnaire, and he returned to watching the TV. A couple more lines and I finished answering it. I looked it over twice, carefully rereading everything just like a future lawyer should, before signing the bottom of each page and handing it to him. If these people genuinely believe there's a possibility of another seeding outbreak, he said with a frown, or that there's some Adumbrey lurking inside the hospital, then why in the goddamn hell are they there? Oh, you're done. He nodded towards the TV. Look at that. They're rioting now or again. If you were stuck in the traffic, you might have gotten caught up in that. I shook my head with an air of disapproval, mimicking his favorite gesture. I can't believe this is happening in our city. Don't read what I wrote. Not that I've written anything false or illegal there, but the fewer the questions, the better. People can change at the drop of a hat, don't forget that, miss. I guess it's because it's the first time this happened in our city, I said. People are panicking and acting irrationally. Like you said, sir, people take normalcy for granted. I guess that includes me too. That's true. And it's not just the shit they're stirring up there that's the problem. Excuse my words, miss, I'm just pissed. An emotionally charged gathering like this in the wake of two major Adumbrey incidents. It affects not only the psyche of the people gathering there, but the city as a whole. Very dangerous. What do you mean, sir? This is the first time something like this happened in La Esperanza. The result is shock, distress, and heightened stress on the minds of the people, creating possible cracks in Adumbrey could wiggle in. It's a vicious cycle that could happen if we don't put a stop to it. Think of earthquakes. A particularly strong earthquake causes a lot of damage, but that's not the end of it. There will be aftershocks that follow which can cause even more devastation, especially if they hit the same place. If a building is already weakened by the main quake, the aftershock might be the one to bring it down. The smartest thing to do is try to get back to normal as soon as possible. I know that's a tall order. Thank you, I said. I've also printed the certificates needed for your tests so we can quickly have these stamped and signed afterwards. It was annoying to have these organized because your beautiful friend is causing quite a commotion there at the back. Sorry for that, I said, with an embarrassed smile. I hoped those two could successfully carry out the plan. I'm sure she didn't mean to. Those rascals, said Henry, or maybe Hector. I'll talk to them later. I was telling Ms. Hartwell here she should try working for the city when she graduates. She's not going to be too keen on that if she sees we employ a bunch of excited boys. Ah no, I said. There's no Are you sure that that's going to be the problem, sir? Said Saffron, winking at me. You may have already scared her from applying to our office. She bent down and whispered to me in a voice intentionally audible to her boss, just bring ear plugs, and you'll be fine working here. I can hear that, Safi, he growled. She chuckled. Miss Hartwell, go over your statement and tell us if there's anything incorrect or inaccurate. I'll edit it. If you're satisfied with it, you can sign it at the space indicated and we can proceed. Are those punks done getting tested? Should be done in a few minutes. There was a slight delay because of our beautiful visitor. Oh, I'm really sorry. I said. Dean wanted to tour your office and... No worries, Miss, Officer H something said. I said it was okay for her to tour. It's rare we get Aloy students interested in what we do. I'll be back in a bit for any edits, said Saffron, walking out. The door. I'm just going to check the testing of the suspects. Harry or maybe Harlem heaved a sigh. Those punks. Safi mentioned 5 of them, about the same age as my oldest girl. We caught them trying to sell Adumbri parts they allegedly harvested from the body of the Titan Adumbri. Some wacko people think those can be used as talismans to ward off Adumbri because they were touched by Corbrains. Is that true? Definitely not. Adumbri body parts can be dangerous. Fortunately, what those punks were selling were fakes. Sculptures made from wads of wet paper painted to look mysterious. Low-life fraudsters trying to profit from the panic. We normally don't test these swindling nut jobs, a waste of resources of the city. But because we had 2 Adumbri attacks, the bid wants every suspect we come across, no matter how seemingly unconnected, tested and processed, their info entered in the database. Better be safe than sorry. Yes, sir, I said, examining the paper Saffron gave me. Go ahead and read it. I'll just get coffee. They accurately typed out the statement I gave earlier. I had some school project I was working on with Dean, so I stayed at her place last Tuesday night. I had no idea about the Adumbri attack on the condominium building I lived in until I saw it on the news. At that point, obviously I didn't go there anymore. After recovering from shock this morning, I decided to come forward to help the police and the bid in assembling the list of the casualties in that horrible incident, more specifically, to remove my name from it and to volunteer any possible information that could help them in rooting out other surviving Adumbri. Everything neatly tied with a ribbon. I decided making the story I told Mom the official one because it was so much easier to keep straight, only requiring Dean to be my witness if needed. The police had no reason to suspect my story. I was a straight-laced lady going to one of the best universities in the country, just doing school work like the hope of the nation that I was. Mental note, we had to change the story Dean told her sister. That was if her sister even cared about it. All in order, miss? Officer H something asked, swigging a steaming mug of coffee in his hand. It's accurate, sir. I'll just sign here. I pointed at the blank. I know to sign there, duh. But it was to give this guy an opportunity to be helpful, and for me to be grateful. He nodded. Thank you, I said as wrote my signature. Am I going to be tested next? Let's wait for Safi. Ah, here she is, he said. They done there? Yes, sir. Ms. Hartwell can follow. And by the way, Dr. Cornelio came in. I think he wants to question Ms. Hartwell first before approving her for testing. He grunted in surprise. He's here now. He better have a good excuse why he was absent yesterday and came in late today. I was about to assume that crazy bastard got killed by an Adumbri behind a dumpster. Excuse not only for us, sir, but for his wife too. Oh ho. You're right. She was worried sick about that old fart not coming home, kept on calling me yesterday. You're both the same age, sir. That reminds me, miss, he said to me, ignoring Saffron's comment. Perhaps you know Cornelio's wife. He's the head of the labs in this station, and his wife is a professor at Alois University. I'm not sure if I do, I said, trying to remember my female law professors who were married. Most were single. Cornelio is the surname. I don't think. No, yes, Cornelius is Kenneth's surname, but his wife uses her maiden name. Isn't that right, Safi? Yes, sir, she said. Her surname is Deslice. I can't remember the last time we were this swamped, said Dr. Kenneth Cornelio, head of the Adumbrey Criminalistics Laboratory of the AIU based in this station. He had a deep and monotonous voice, and looked exactly like you would expect a man with his job, a glasses-wearing, academe-looking, serious man who was going to give the boring exposition in a sci-fi movie. I'd say during the McHunter scandal, but we didn't have this laboratory back then. HQ had a barely funded disgrace of a facility at the time. Do you know about the McHunters, Miss Hartwell? This is weirdly fascinating. He could ask a question without his voice rising at the end of the sentence. Isn't that the super-duper rich family infected by Adumbrey? I said. I think it was the head of their family. Oh, so you're familiar with them? You were probably in high school when the whole scandal exploded. It was actually because of them that the city ramped up its spending on anti-Adumbrey tech to the level we have now. I simply nodded because I didn't have anything else to say. Even if I've lived in this city for only a couple of years, I've heard of the infamously wealthy McHunter clan because they were the owners of the huge abandoned development project where the derelict building we used as our hideout was located. I tried to shift in my seat without drawing attention, hoping to get a better view of Dr. Cornelio's screen. He was reviewing my government records on his computer before I get tested. And it seems, given recent events, he said, we need to expend more resources, leading to a quandary. He held up his hands and moved them up and down as if they were weighing scales. Spend astronomical amounts of the taxpayers' money to have state-of-the-art facilities to combat Adumbrey. What if no Adumbrey appears? The public will accuse the government of wasting money. Don't do anything, and then an Adumbrey shows up. The public will crucify the government. Isn't it a funny situation, Ms. Hartwell? Yes. I wasn't sure what to think of this guy. He nodded at a high stack of documents Saffron delivered earlier. Paperwork is accumulating, and the bid is demanding results. You should have called ahead of time so we could have scheduled you properly. I'm sorry, sir, I said. I know you lived in that condominium building, ground zero of the seeding outbreak, so you might have assumed we'll immediately accommodate you. However, we have plenty of individuals connected to the case already lined up for testing. Yes, sir. That's what I incorrectly thought. A no-nonsense rule stickler asshole. Fiercely bureaucratic. Very difficult to deal with. He couldn't send me home, but he was giving me a bit of a hard time for not following the rules. Sorry, I said again for good measure. There are the residents who weren't present during the outbreak, like yourself. The employees, not just of the property manager, but also of the various companies renting office spaces in that building. Occupants of surrounding buildings are being tested as well. The main office can't handle them all and passed some of the load to us. We all have them scheduled, Ms. Hartwell. And now, I come to my office to find out you just showed up here, and Martin slotted you in. In managing our test slots, we keep in mind accommodating unforeseen emergency testing. For example, the suspects selling fake Adumbrey body parts that were just brought in. But not people just showing up when they could have called. Martin. Was that Johann's second name? A huge hassle to deal with these kinds of people, my usual tricks weren't that effective. I stuttered, I was afraid that police might come and drag me away. Drag you away? Ms. Hartwell, the police won't arrest you for this. You're a law student, are you not? You should know there are procedures we follow. Yes, sir, I replied. Prick. I was tempted to say there were many cases the police didn't follow procedure which we studied in law school, but that was a dumb move. I didn't need to antagonize him. I was thinking the cops will come to school or something, and escort me off to get tested. Well, I can't say that doesn't happen. However, given the police are currently stretched thin, I don't think they will specifically come for you. I've seen it on TV, so I thought it was going to happen to me too. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, it's just that it looks bad and... Say no more, Ms. Hartwell. I understand your position. You do? Really? I truly do. Take my situation, for example, working in a lab testing a dumbbry. My family's social life is affected by this. It's quite common for friends and acquaintances to avoid prolonged social interactions with me and my wife once they know our line of work. Quite understandable even if irrational. Or, perhaps it is rational. I'm sorry to hear that, sir. Okay, I didn't need to know shit about your life. Not the direction I thought this conversation would go, but he seemed to become lenient with me. I see here that your last test recorded in the BID database was on January 20th. Just last month. The one before this should be for your enrollment. You are a first-year law student at Alois University, correct? I nodded. He said, then what is this January 20th test for? And a profiling at that. Sir, that's because I witnessed a fellow law student jump out the window down to the ocean. Our building is on a cliff. I guess she was super stressed, or had some mental problems. I'm not sure what happened after that, but I do know they never found her body. Maybe it was somehow connected to a dumbbry and that's why I was tested. Perhaps. But why did you undergo an Alois field profiling? And this doesn't seem to be at the main office. Isn't that the egg pod test? I got an answer for that, and the perfect way of delivering it. I don't know. There's this professor at Melcher who said I should try it. I think it should have been just the helmet test thingy. Field integrity test. That. But the lady professor insisted I should do that test where I sit in this huge white machine that looks like an egg pod thingy. I think her name was Professor Desley. Deslies, he said with dejected flatness. I snapped my fingers. Yes, I think that's it. I haven't heard the surname Deslies before. Why am I not surprised? Dr. Cornelio sighed while shaking his head. She is my wife. Oh. I didn't know that, I exclaimed. He didn't know that I already knew because Saffron told me. That's so cool. Both of you are science. I've advised her a number of times not to do this. It's not in accordance with the guidelines. She merely wants to satisfy her scientific curiosity, he complained, his monotone voice gradually showing breaks of frustration. I don't know if I agree with her decision to submit the test to the database as per the rules. A wiser choice would have been to delete any trace of her favorite pastime. But I would never suggest that. No, there was no reason to. And the unit you call egg pod thingy at Melcher is an experimental model used for research and not a regulation-approved instrument. The only egg pod thingy for official use in this city is at LEPD headquarters. Is it bad? Are there side effects, or? There shouldn't be any, Ms. Hartwell. No cause for worry. Although, I suppose I should apologize for my wife inconveniencing you. And since everything seems to be in order, you can proceed to testing. I'll just call for someone. He waved his hand to the people outside the glass wall of his office. Johann was walking along the corridor with Dean. She had a bunch of other presumably technicians in tow. His eyes widened when he saw his boss. His co-workers fled like rats back to their holes, surprised by the presence of their boss, but not as surprised as Johann. Dr. Cornelio gestured for him to come in, and he had no choice but to comply. Sir, I didn't know you came in, he said. I wasn't aware I should report to you. He grinned apologetically, scratching his head. It's just that your wife has been calling the office and... Dr. Cornelio stared him down to shut him up. Martin, I expected better from you. I found out you scheduled Ms. Hartwell here. Dean. I said with fake excitement. This is Dr. Cornelio. Guess what? He's the husband of Professor Deslice. Remember her? The pretty professor at Melcher. Oh my God, really? Dean said without missing a beat. I'll never forget Professor Deslice, beauty and brains, all in one. There was a glint of understanding in her eye. I didn't know she's married. So cute that both of you are scientists, sir. She did a little curtsy, drawing her hands to her side as if she was wearing a skirt. Good afternoon, sir. My name is Amber Dean. I'm Erin's friend and classmate. I accompanied her here because she's a scaredy cat. Hey, I'm not. Sorry for being so informal, sir. I can't help but gush. I didn't expect to meet a couple scientist. Right? I said. That's what I said earlier. The two of us were speaking rapidly and loudly, not giving Dr. Cornelio the opportunity to butt in. I actually saw a picture of Professor Deslice when Johann was touring me in the office. Did she work here before, sir? I asked, eagerly leaning forward, making it perfectly clear he had no other choice but to shoo us away. You met each other at work? Yes, he said, visibly uncomfortable with the two of us prying. That could be a great TV show. I'll watch it. Can you tell us more? Here are your papers, Miss Hartwell. Martin will accompany you to the testing. Move along now, I have a lot on my plate to deal with. Right on it, sir, Johann replied. He gave me a wink, grateful for our efforts in distracting his boss. Ms. Hartwell can be done before the next group scheduled for testing arrives. 106 pounds, Ms. Errand, said Philip, tapping a tablet with his stylus. You know you shouldn't ask for a woman's weight, I said. That should apply to tests too. He laughed at my lame attempt at a joke. Sitting beside him was Johann, who gave me an assuring thumbs up. Just the usual social interactions, it was like filling up a quota per setting. Normally, I'd get tired after a while, but I've grown to appreciate this given all the utter nonsense happening in my life. Officer H something was right, we take normalcy for granted. I went through a fairly basic physical assessment. Weight, height, heart rate, BMI, the usual. I passed through bioscanners peaking my muscle mass, bone density and structure, and other stuff Philip was blabbering about earlier. He even jested that, for all they knew, maybe I was a monster hiding in human skin. And they'd be right. After that, they led me inside a room with even more machines. Whoa! As soon as I entered, I felt the atmosphere became heavier. It was slightly harder to breathe, like hiking up a very tall mountain and experiencing thin air for the first time. Static made the hair on my arms and the back of my neck stand on end. Johann looked me in the eye for a couple of seconds, then gazed upwards. I followed suit. Hanging in the center of the high stainless steel ceiling a curious contraption made of concentric silver plates. It gave off a very faint high-pitched whirring noise, almost a whistle. The umbrella. I couldn't see the whatever field it was, but it was certainly turned on. Johann better have made sure his plan worked. I'm not sure if this is normal, I said, but I've got this weird sensation. I held up my arms, showing them my goosebumps. That's normal, Ms. Errand. Philip ushered me to the large rectangular machines that checked regeneration. This way, please. I stood rooted on the spot, appearing to look nervous, my eyes flickering at the machines then at him. Then I glared at Johann. He was behind a control panel of sorts. Philip stepped back, unsure of what he had done wrong. Philip won't bite, Johann said, grinning at his coworker. He's a nice guy actually. We can check his HR records after this, if you want. Oh, I wasn't thinking that. I said to Philip. Honest. I was just scared of this machine. And with that, Philip will either consciously or unconsciously, it didn't matter which, keep his distance from me. I moved to the machine in an angle that ensured he'd be on my left side following me. I put my hands here. Palms down, please, he said. And look into the retina scanner. As the machine did its thing, Johann chatted with his coworker, teasingly pairing him with me, so he wouldn't look too closely at my hands. He wouldn't think about checking my right palm, anyway, that was such a random thing to do. Which was why Johann decided, instead of standing beside me, he should be commanding the control terminal in case the machine reacted to the crystals on my palm. After the prickling on my palm stopped, I quickly turned to Johann to check if there was something wrong. He gave me a subtle shake of his head. Nice. I was so relieved that it lowered my disgust for the helmet test that came up next. I was even humming to myself while waiting for the helmet thingy to scan my brain and whatnot. It did help it was Johann administering the test. I would have been more uncomfortable if it was someone else. He already knew there was something wrong with me being an Adumbri, so he'd chuck up any irregularity to that reason, and not to the other not-so-normal part of me. I reminded myself I didn't have any cause for concern because the suppressor would deal with it. Just a normal girl, sitting on a chair, getting tested. Normal. Normal. Do I want to be normal again? I mean, yes. I should, right? Damn it. Was this spooky errand getting to me? I was already thinking like an Adumbri. The natural thing would be to try and find a way to be human again, or at least hold back the Adumbri incursion in my mind and body. Technically, I should be happy now that my powers were suppressed, that there was a way to be cured or something. Perhaps in the future the bid could find a successful way of turning an Adumbri back to human permanently. But I wasn't happy. So. We're done, Miss Errand, Philip said, interrupting my thoughts. You can wait at the lobby while we process your results and sign off the certificates. The results will be in the bid database, but it is important you have papers too. Thank you so much. I was about to go out the door when Dr. Cornelio came in. Hello, sir, I said, stepping out of his way. He didn't even look at me. I shrugged and walked out the door. Tritium power cells are expensive, he firmly said to Johann and Philip, and while thriftiness is debatably a minor virtue, I presume the two of you are aware why you shouldn't let them run low if possible. Excuse me? I stopped walking and decided to eavesdrop a bit, holding the door a few inches open. Sorry, I wasn't able to check. I'll change it right away, sir, Johann cut in. No need. I already had Kempis change it before Ms. Hartwell entered this room. I wanted to tell you before I forget it. Don't let it happen again. I didn't show any reaction, slowly closing the door and walking out of the lab to the lobby. I'm sorry, sir, said Johann Martin Fischer. I forgot. Everything had been going smoothly according to Johann's plan. He changed the power cells of the umbrella without anyone noticing, and it had gone into energy conservation mode as expected, lowering the settings to a level he was certain couldn't detect the Adumbri traits of Errand, especially after she took the suppressor. He also had checked the readings right before they started her tests. He couldn't risk it with an actual Adumbri in their midst. Philip hadn't come near his terminal at all, engrossly chatting with Dean and their co-workers, spinning stories of their supposed encounters with Adumbri, most of which were tall tales to make them look cool. As if the planet had aligned, even the extremely diligent Dr. Cornelio was absent for the day, a once-in-a-century occurrence. Had been. Why had his boss shown up for work now? And why had he checked the power cells? That was a stupid question. It was something Dr. Cornelio was bound to do if he was present. We were so close. Johann vented in his head. They stumbled right as they were about to cross the finish line. He swallowed his saliva as his hands grew cold, blood rushing to his head made his temples throb. He was about to find out just how much his plans were ruined. Martin, Dr. Cornelio said, using his second name. His boss had lectured him that the name, Johann, was given to male babies as a matter of practice in olden times, being differentiated by calling them their second names. I've always told you that apologizing after the fact doesn't have much use if we already let an Adumbry run free because of our lapses. I understand. The plan wasn't completely ruined just yet. The doctor hadn't raised an alarm. No one has. Either the scanner hadn't detected anything, or no one had checked it, the latter being the more plausible reason, as it was his and Philip's job to compile and upload the reports during their shift. From the corner of his eye, he saw Erin walking out of the testing area with her back to him, so he couldn't see her expression. Did she hear their conversation? She must have. What was she going to do? More importantly, what am I going to do next? I know you understand, said Dr. Cornelio, it's another matter when it comes to doing. I'll be checking an issue with the main office, and then I'll be free to sign Ms. Hartwell's papers. You'll sign it, sir. Lieutenant Tedderton can do it if you're busy. He's been signing the certificates in your abs. And now, I'm present. So, I will sign it. There goes another idea. Lieutenant Tedderton had the authority to sign the papers and was one of Johann's backup plans. The loud-mouthed head of the AIU, while well-versed in all matters Adumbry, had little patience for the nitty-gritty technical side. He would sign off on certificates, fully trusting his subordinates. Dr. Cornelio was the complete opposite of that. Yes, sir, Johann said, his brain already working on another plan. Give me about 10 minutes while I make an important call to HQ. Don't interrupt me. And can you find Saffron and tell her to bring me coffee? She's not answering her phone, perhaps she's not at her desk. Johann couldn't remember the last time he asked Ms. Safi to make his coffee. It must be an important call. I have time. But not enough. Copy, sir. I'll look for Ms. Safi, and have the papers prepared. Dr. Cornelio gave them a curt nod, dismissing them. Philip, can you handle the next batch? Johann said. Let me just make this up with Dr. Cornelio with Erin's case. I'll catch up. Sure, bud. Don't take it too seriously, you know how he is. Yes, but I don't want this to affect my quarterly evaluation. Philip scratched his head. How come you care about that now? He never gives any of us a high rating no matter our performance. Now's a good time as any to start caring, Johann said. Maybe we should be more serious about this, especially when we have Adumbry roaming around our city and killing people. Going above and beyond, he said with an unconvinced shrug. You do you, bud. I'm contented with doing what I'm paid for. Go now, I'll hold down the fort. Thanks. Johann ran to the usual places one would expect to find Ms. Safi. Deep in the records section, the bustling admin, at Lieutenant Tedderton's office, or at the small cafeteria they were blessed to have the budget for. While he zipped across the building, he composed himself. The beating of his heart shook his body like he was in a rave, with a 1000-watt bass box blasting right beside him, keeping in rhythm with his pulsating migraine. Deal with the problems one by one, he coached himself. The most pressing concern were the digital report files of the test. Erin's certificates would contain tracking numbers of her test records in the system, so he needed to first compile the test records, including the umbrella readings, and upload them into the BID database before presenting the papers to Dr. Cornelio for his signature. His boss was bound to check the numbers, so faking them wasn't an option. Once the files were in the system, there was no way Johann, with his meager hacking skills, could fiddle with them. Even a battalion of top-tier military cyber operatives had no hope of breaching the BID database and altering files undetected. Which meant he had to tamper with the files before uploading them and having the certificates signed. This was the biggest flaw of the system, ensuring the integrity of files uploaded from various sources all over the country. The BID couldn't possibly check all of the files one by one. Strict laws were in place paired with severe penalties to deter people from uploading tampered files, people like me. But 10 minutes wasn't going to cut it. He already wasted a couple of minutes looking for Ms. Safi. More time. I need to make more time. Safi. You just missed her, grumbled grumpy Tony, their loyal but cranky janitor since time immemorial. He pointed down the hallway. She went back to her spot. Thanks, Tony, said Johann, running in the direction grumpy Tony pointed. After mulling it over for a few seconds, he took out his phone and texted Erend, everything is under control. We'll take some time. Just wait there. He decided not to add, don't run away, although he really wanted to. He wasn't sure if she'd do anything stupid or violent. She was mostly still Erend, I hope, but she was an Adumbri too. What if the Adumbri was already in control and had other plans to keep itself safe? What if she'd attack this place? No, she won't do that. She was still under the effects of the suppressor, and she had no diluter. Even the Adumbri inside her would be muted somewhat, should be. They hadn't used the suppressor on an actual Adumbri before. Why am I helping an Adumbri? That question made him slow down. If Erend was exposed and caught, then he'd also be arrested. Yes, he should help her. That was enough of an answer for him. Ms. Safi. There she was at the cubicle of Marissa, a couple down her own, discussing something on her computer screen. He slowed down as he approached them, inhaling deeply to calm himself. Ms. Safi, oh, hey, Marissa. Sorry for the interruption. I'm just going to ask Ms. Safi something. The curly-haired brunette rolled her eyes at him. She still hadn't forgiven him the last time she nearly had gotten into trouble because of his hacking misadventures. You look quite haggard. Ms. Safi peered above her violet-rimmed glasses. We were about to finish, she said. She explained a couple more things to Marissa, then went back to her cubicle, waving for Johann to follow her. What is it? Is Dr. Cornelio giving you a hard time? Yes, no, maybe. Wait, how did you know? Intuition. The doctor's been acting weird. Absent yesterday, late today. No call informing us he won't be able to report for work. And according to his wife, he didn't come home yesterday. Marital problems? Ms. Safi shook her head, reminiscent of Lieutenant Tetterton's favorite gesture. It's not my place to speculate. Anyway, whatever the issue is, it's sometimes unavoidable for bosses or for anyone for that matter to bring their problems to the office. Is that what's happening? Marital problems? There might be something here he could use. We both know what Dr. Cornelio is like, but he's also human. Just give him a pass if he's too hard on you today. Thanks for the advice. You're definitely an institution in this precinct, Ms. Safi. Enough of that. What can I help you with? It's just that Dr. Cornelio wants you to bring him coffee. He's busy right now in his office with a call. Only that? I thought it was something serious. Ms. Safi sighed, looking at the ceiling. Although, it might be serious if he's asking me to make his coffee again. Okay, I'll get on it. Should we call his wife? He blurted out as Ms. Safi was about to leave. She gave him an incredulous look. I think she'd want to know that Dr. Cornelio is safe. That's up to Dr. Cornelio. I know you have good intentions, but it's inappropriate to stick our noses in their affairs. Yes. You're right as usual, Ms. Safi. You should go back to the lab. From the look on your face, you have a lot of fires to put out. Yeah, I'll just stand here for a minute to catch my breath. I ran around the building to find you. He stared at Ms. Safi's back as she walked away, making sure she was going to the pantry. Then he looked over at Marissa's cubicle. She was hunched over, poring over a thick folder. The other cubicles weren't occupied. A few people passing by the hallway. They didn't look his way. He went inside Ms. Safi's cubicle and pulled out the thick notebook in her center drawer. D for Deslice. There was no entry of Deslice. It must be under Cornelio. Jackpot. There was the name of Professor Deslice and what he presumed to be her personal number. Ms. Safi's mention of marital problems sparked a genius plan of a possible way to distract Dr. Cornelio and buy himself time. Genius or stupid? Now was the time to find out. If Ms. Safi wasn't going to do it, then he had to do it himself. He called the number with his phone as he sprinted back to the laboratory. "Please pick up," he prayed. "Please don't be in class." The ringing continued. He might need another plan. What should? "Hello," a warm woman's voice answered in a professional tone. "Who is this?" "Good hello, good afternoon, ma'am," he stammered. He tried to steady his breathing even as he ran. "Professor Deslice?" He hadn't talked to her before, so he was unfamiliar with her voice. He gave a vague explanation that he worked for the AIU without giving his name. "I remembered Lieutenant Tedderton mentioned you were looking for Dr. Cornell." "Yes. Do you know where he is?" Professor Deslice said, her calm demeanor drastically changing. "Is he there?" "Yes, ma'am. He came to war." "Thank God he's alive," she said. "Can you give the phone to him? I need to talk to him." I am actually not supposed to call you, ma'am. But I thought you should know he is well." "What? Who is this?" "Hold on, how did you get this?" "Please call the office if you want to talk to him." He dropped the call and then turned off his phone so she'd have no choice but to contact their office. He hoped Ms. Safi was on her way to give Dr. Cornelio his coffee so she wouldn't be able to stop the call getting forwarded to their boss. "Now, to see what I can do with Aaron's files," he thought as he entered the room with the computer terminals. Johann pulled a chair, turned it around, and sat on it backward. He plugged in a USB into the port of the terminal, and took one last look through the glass wall in front of him to check if anyone could interrupt him. Philip was testing a couple of people. He seemed to have pulled Kempis along to be his temporary assistant. The other technicians were working inside the other rooms, or maybe just pretending to look busy because their boss was around. "Let's do this," he yelled in his head to encourage himself. Johann put a timer on his phone for 7 minutes, cracked his fingers, and got to work. He barely blinked, staring intently at the screens, his eyes starting to tear up. He didn't even bat an eye when he noticed that the umbrella did detect anomalies. He didn't pause to analyze them even if he was interested. It didn't matter what they were, it was imperative they were deleted as soon as possible. His hands flew over the keyboards, the clicking of the keys a symphony that lulled him into a trance. Beep 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 alerted his cell phone. 7 minutes already. He grabbed a random stack of papers on his way out. Dr. Cornelio was expectedly in his office, seemingly having an intense discussion on the phone. Johann couldn't hear what he was saying because of the soundproof glass walls, but it was apparent Professor Deslice managed to reach her husband. "As for me, I'm not supposed to know anything about that." Johann took a deep breath, thinking to himself, "I hope I'm not shooting myself in the foot with this." Then he knocked on the door. His boss looked up with an annoyed snarl. He waved the papers. The doctor shooed him away and turned his swivel chair around. The message was clear. "My plan worked. Hell yeah." Even in this tense situation, he couldn't help but feel elated over a small victory. If his boss actually asked him to leave the papers for signature, he would have been dead. Johann ran back to the room with the computer terminals, hoping that no one entered and noticed what he was doing inside. He didn't know how long Dr. Cornelio's wife would keep him occupied. Back to work. He gritted his teeth in a mad grimace as beads of sweats formed on his forehead despite the aircon blasting cold air in full. There were times he realized he was holding his breath. This was the fastest he had ever worked. If he normally worked at this pace, he would have full scores on his quarterly performance, even with Dr. Cornelio rating him. "And send," he said. A huge grin was splashed across his face as he watched the tampered files upload to the bid database. He stretched his body, savoring the relief his tense muscles felt, allowing himself to exhale a satisfied groan. Martin. Johann nearly vomited his heart out. He jumped up from his chair. Sir. You're here, yeah. I thought you were still on the phone so. Where are Miss Hartwell's papers? I'm just printing them, sir. I thought you already had them prepared. I forgot about that. Yes, I did but I reprinted it because there are some, unclear things the paper folded. Just give those to me. Johann hastily gathered the correct papers for Aaron's clearance. Here, sir. These are ready now. Dr. Cornelio's eyes narrowed, but he didn't say anything, taking the papers from him. He sighed in relief. His boss wouldn't know that he changed them, and he didn't have any reason not to sign these. Kempis suddenly appeared at the doorway, blocking Dr. Cornelio. Oops, sorry. Nearly bumped into you there, sir. Don't run inside the labs, Dr. Cornelio said. I was rushing because you might forget this. Kempis rummaged inside a file cabinet and pulled out a piece of paper. Dr. Cornelio inquiringly tilted his head and reached for it. Kempis explained, the computer printed this after I changed the power cells. I'm not sure what it is about, but it might be part of the test records of that lady inside here earlier with that beautiful blonde friend, so I kept it. Johann clenched his jaws to stop himself from reacting. His hands uncontrollably shook as he hid them behind his back. His heart raced, there was ringing in his ears. Thank you, Kempis, Dr. Cornelio said. Martin, pass by my office later to get this. Miss Hartwell might have been waiting for some time already. See you, sir, Kempis cheerily said, waving at the doctor. He turned to Johann. You okay, bro? Bro. Kempis approached him. Sir. Johann suddenly exclaimed. He shoved Kempis aside and ran after his boss. Dr. Cornelio, sir. Wait. We'll take some time, huh? I muttered, reading Johann's text message again. My eyes drifted to the top of my cell phone screen, checking the time. I clicked my tongue in annoyance. It had been nearly 10 minutes since I last heard from him. And telling me, just wait there. How long am I supposed to wait? Chill out, Aaron, I told myself. Let's not do anything suspicious here. To be fair, 10 minutes wasn't long when it came to transacting with the government. There were other people at the lobby waiting for whatever who were here before me. Getting my driver's license took ages, and that didn't involve any lab work, or maybe it did, and that was why it took so long. Who knows what the DMV people are doing? My backside started to hurt from sitting on the hard edge of one of the plastic waiting chairs lining the right side of the lobby. The chairs were old, their red coat peeling in places, and every time I shifted, they'd loudly creak. To make it worse, the chairs were a tad too high for me, my feet dangling over the floor if I didn't sit on the edge. On the bright side, I did miss my body getting sore because of normal things. It would have been more comfortable if I plopped my butt on the sofas on the opposite side of the room, to even have a view of the TV to distract me from impulsively thinking of running away. Unfortunately, because Dean was sitting there, guys crowded over there too. Not just Johann's technician buddies, most of them went back to work. Young cops and other employees were talking to her, maybe hitting on her. Interestingly, there was a fine line between those two when talking to someone as attractive as Dean. Some of them were even asking to take pictures with her as if she was a celebrity. Did Johann introduce her to the whole building? I couldn't help but be amazed at how she handled them. Other girls might be uncomfortable with this level of attention. I guess Dean probably was too, but she didn't show it. She handled the situation perfectly, never looking bothered the tiniest bit, dealing with the guys like a teacher with excited preschoolers. I was more well-versed in social interactions than the average person, and I could tell Dean was at the top of the game in this specific setting. Not that I would ever find myself in her place, so I couldn't compare. A couple of minutes later, an older cop, sour-faced and at the same time embarrassed by the behavior of his subordinates, arrived to disperse them. Dean, of course, graciously lied she wasn't troubled. With her fans gone, she called over at me to sit beside her. What was that all about? I asked. It's a fact of life you're beautiful, but why were they taking pictures of you? Oh, shut it. She tried to pinch my side. I shoved her hands away and moved to the far end of the sofa. Whatever. It's because of my sister. Your sister? Why? Her boyfriend is the executive assistant of the mayor, so she usually attends events and stuff like that with him, and the police know her because they're guarding those kinds of events. You can't exactly miss Sis. She's popular in this city actually, a couple of local magazines have featured her before. So, they recognized you're her younger sister and wanted to take pictures with you? I guess. Or they just wanted to take pictures with a beautiful girl then post it on social media to flex on other guys? I snorted in disgust, ever the protective friend. Guys, honestly. We should have thought of a better plan than use you as a distraction. I'm fine with it, no biggie. Hang on, freeze frame, rewind a bit. Your sister's boyfriend is the executive assistant of the mayor? I thought he's an architect working for a luxury property developer. I also remember a pilot mentioned before. This guy has many jobs or what? Those are different guys, Dean said with an embarrassed grin. The lore of my sister's love life is vast. The number of her boyfriends is bigger than the set of counting numbers. I'm not sure if I should say anything to her. I wouldn't dare, but I'm sure she wouldn't listen to me anyway if I tell her to stick to one guy. Your sister is very scary, I said. Enough of her, and of me. How about you? How are you holding up? I'm fine too, no biggie, I said, repeating her earlier response. I gave her a hesitant smile, like I was hiding something. Indeed, I was really hiding a problem, but I wasn't going to tell her the umbrella might have detected something anomalous with me. It was just my instinct to farm sympathy whenever I could. I especially needed her on my side now more than ever. Really, you're fine. Dean examined my face as I put up my best uncomfortable but hiding it and failing expression. She reminded me we'd go shopping later. There was a sale at this shop and that store, but there was a wider range of selections at another place. This or that mall might be too crowded, yada, yada, yada. She moved on to my size, colors that went along with my pale skin and black hair, fashion trends and why we shouldn't follow those. She talked on and on, clearly trying to lighten the mood. Hey, she's a pretty nice person. I couldn't help but be surprised when people were nice without ulterior motives. What did that feel like? What was the thought process behind it? I honestly couldn't comprehend it. While chatting with Dean, I checked the time on my phone again. Also, no message from Johan. What now? The police weren't acting suspiciously like they were about to arrest me. And why would they? All of my other test results were normal. If the umbrella did detect something, then Dr. Cornelio would have already called me back in for more testing. And if I resisted, that was the time the police would act and restrain me. That sounded logical to me. Nothing was happening. Perhaps Johan was able to fix whatever the problem was. He did say everything was under control. Should I trust him? It seemed like I didn't have any other choice than to rely on him or, just hightail it out of here. Relying on others. I hated it. I didn't have control of the situation, and the one in charge of fixing the problem might have interests not aligned with my own. And if others failed, most of the time I didn't have any recourse to fix their mistakes that affected me. I texted Johan, asking him what was up. A couple of minutes later and there was still no reply. I tried calling him and I couldn't connect to his phone. Shit. Either he didn't have reception inside the labs or something went horribly wrong. It's still not done, I said, looking around with concern, interrupting Dean's lecture on makeups. What's taking them so long? I'm sure they're just busy, she said. We got the time to wait. I nodded. Dr. Cornelio did say they were swamped. Maybe I was just overthinking this, I did do that a lot. However, nothing to be lost by being prudent. I'm going to ask, I said. I stood up and approached the counter to inquire. Pretty normal stuff, I'd say. We had been waiting for a while. Still nothing, drawled the bored lady at the counter, and she wasn't sure how long it would take. She didn't even check anything, not sparing a glance at me, just continuing to stare fixatedly on her screen. Typical American bureaucratic process. Can I just come back for them? I said. Bring your claim stub and ID, she said. We'll keep your files for 5 days only, afterwards we'll shred it and you have to pay a fee. We'll do that, I said. Thank you, miss. Errand, are you sure? Said Dean. There's no problem, wait. I just want to get out of this place. We're going shopping, right? That'll take my mind off of things. Go shopping so that I'd have clothes if I was forced to go into hiding, sounds like a great plan. A better use of my time than sitting on my ass here, watching the news and listening to Dean's treatise on blending makeup colors. Sure, if that's what you want. Thanks, Dean. We'll return Tomo. Ms. Hartwell, a voice called, followed by pounding on glass, then ringing. It was Saffron behind the counter window, pinging the reception bell to get our attention. She exited to the lobby and caught up with us. Ms. Hartwell, Dr. Cornelio is calling for you, something about your certificates. Why? Is there anything wrong? I said, keeping my face neutral. Did they realize I was an Adumbri? Were they setting up a trap for me? I don't think so, she replied. I picked up nothing from her expression or way of speaking. Follow me to his office. Go with her or run. My brain went into overdrive processing my options. Can Dean go with me inside? I scanned my surroundings as we followed Saffron, walking down the familiar corridor bounded by glass walls on either side. It was reassuring I could see into the rooms. Any ambush here, guys? No one wanted to arrest me. Everyone was acting normally, going about their daily working lives. I was overthinking this for sure. Nothing to worry about. I may not want to rely on others, but I was strangely okay with putting my fate in the hands of an entity I couldn't even see, and who didn't even have hands. Ms. Hartwell, Dr. Cornelio said. He was sitting behind his table like the first time we met, inhaling the fumes of his hot coffee. And your classmate is here too. Johann stood beside his boss, clutching a bunch of papers, strangely ashen-faced. He stared at me with deranged eyes, almost trying to transmit his thoughts to me through sigh. Then he looked at the papers beside the doctor. I raised my brow at him. What the shit is happening? Please have a seat, the two of you. Hello, sir. I sat right across him, bending subtly forward to try and get a glimpse of the papers Johann was focused on. Good to be back, I jokingly said. Is there any problem? Whoops. Should I have said that? Did it sound like I was expecting for something to be wrong, or was that normal? Nothing of the sort, he said. Johann behind him visibly deflated in relief. Although there was something interesting in your results. Johann went into a little seizure behind his boss, trying to stop himself from grabbing the papers. Dean looked at me with a little alarm, picking up something wasn't right. What kind of interesting thing, sir? If he did anything suspicious, I was out of here. Both of his hands were holding a paper, probably the one with anomalous readings. At least, he couldn't push an alarm button under his table, or was that only in movies? Interesting, he said, not listening to me. Did I need to distract him? Sir, how's your wife? I shut up as Johann made frantic signs not to continue with it. Another tract then. Oh, sir, what was the interesting thing you mentioned? How are you feeling these days, Miss Hartwell? Same as usual, I guess. Shit, he might know something. What was that interesting thing? I see, he adjusted his glasses, looking at my paper. Several seconds passed. I kept glancing at Dean, checking for a cue if her guardian angel instructed her to flee. The silence going on for too long, I decided to speak up. I mean, sir, not the same after what I've gone through or didn't go through. I was lucky enough not to be there. But physically, I feel fine. Hopefully, after this test, I can go back to living normally. Living normally, yes. He nodded. That would be good. Excuse me, Dr. Cornelio, sir. Dean said. Your coffee might be getting cold. Dr. Cornelio was mildly surprised with her too, but after a couple of seconds, he did pick up his coffee. You're right. I do dislike cold coffee. He raised the cup to take a sip from it and the cup accidentally slipped from his hand. He yelped in surprise and stood up. I looked at Dean, but she didn't run away, instead leaning forward to check what happened. Oh my God, are you okay, sir? Dean said, her hand covering her mouth. I am so sorry. What for? Dr. Cornelio wiped the front of his clothes with his hands. It wasn't your fault. A slight mishap, is all. If anyone has to apologize, it is me for spilling the coffee on Miss Hartwell's paper. No worries, Miss Hartwell, said Dr. Cornelio as if in answer to my thoughts. That was just an extra piece of paper. The rest of your certificates are here. I'll sign them now before I spill coffee on them as well. Dean, Johann, and I stared at each other while listening to the minute scratching of Dr. Cornelio's pen on the papers. All of us weren't sure of what had just happened. Dean shrugged at me, and I shrugged back. We're home free, I guess. Here are your papers, Dr. Cornelio said. I cautiously accepted the documents. He pointed his pen at me. Be careful you don't spill coffee on those like I did. Of course, you could have those reprinted for a fee, but I doubt you want to come to a police station again. What did he mean by that? Yes, I mean no, sir, I said. Or, yes. The interesting thing in answering negative questions, Ms. Hartwell, is that the leading yes or no doesn't matter. It's the qualifying phrase afterwards. No, I don't want to go to a police station, and yes, I don't want to go to the police station, are the same in response to my question, although there might be a preference to the first phrasing. No, sir. I don't want to go to a police station again, I clarified. It's just scary even if I haven't done anything wrong. Understandable. I also don't want to be inside a police station if I can help it. But then I remember I have a job here. The corners of his lips turned up the slightest bit, his shoulders quivered as he chuckled at his own joke, or maybe he was having a seizure. I honestly couldn't tell if he was laughing or dying. Johann couldn't either based from the bewilderment painted on his face. Thank you, sir, I said, laughing along with him. I'll stay clear of police stations and hot coffee. Hooray! Dean said, repeatedly thumping her palms on the ceiling of the car. Woohoo! What are you doing? I asked, keeping my head down and pressing myself against the car door so she wouldn't accidentally hit me with her arms inside this small space. I wasn't sure how well she could control her strength. Celebrating? Shouldn't you be happy nothing happened? She honked the car's horn a few times. Celebrate with me. Yeah, nothing happened. Right? I'm not sure why you were anxious earlier. You're human, remember? You have nothing to be afraid of. And you also took the suppressor. I mean you never know when a plan suddenly goes wrong just because. This time, the plan did work without a hitch, she said, oblivious to the whole umbrella thing. I was certain from Johann's demeanor at Dr. Cornelio's office that something did go wrong. Dean hummed a cheery tune as she backed the car out of the parking space. Nobody got hurt except for Dr. Cornelio. But he barely reacted to it. It splashed all over the paper and his lap. It might have been not that hot then. Too bad. I wonder why my guardian angel told me to point out the coffee mug. And why point at it, not kick the table to spill it? I shrugged. I filed this tidbit in my mental cabinet. How does Dr. Cornelio spilling his coffee factor in the whole thing? She continued. Something about the paper maybe? Maybe dunno, I said. I checked my phone to show I wasn't interested in the topic, only listening with half an ear. Whatever that paper was, the guardian angel wanted it destroyed. Johann would tell me if there was something more to this that would explain the bizarre instruction of the guardian angel. For now, we should change topic or Dean might realize there was something anomalous about me I was trying to hide. Dean. Look, 50% off at Belarus Boutique. Let's go shopping there. Wow, time flies so fast when you're having fun, Dean cheerily said, as if our 3-hour-long shopping spree fully charged her batteries instead of draining them like it did to mine. What the hell was wrong with her? Was the majority of the human race like this? Maybe we should just be wiped out by a Dumbry. You had fun, right? She asked as she propped my new bike, a foldable one, against the side of the cabinet. Yeah, it was fun, I replied, putting on a smile that was about to break because I didn't have any more interaction points to squeeze for the day. It was like fighting a losing battle keeping in your poop as you rushed home. I was totally out of it, completely pooped, if you will. Okay, just shut up, Aaron's brain. Geez, I was so tired my brain was going cuckoo. Good night, Aaron. Dean waved, walking out the door. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow, I echoed with my last ounce of social energy. I closed the door on her face gently, even though I wanted to slam it shut with all my might. It'd probably be cathartic popping it off its hinges. Good night. I stepped over the paper bags littered all over the floor, the stuff we bought, and teetered to my bed, allowing myself to fall face first on the inviting mattress as soon as I got close enough. I hadn't realized I could get so drained I nearly dropped my face. That's a no-no for rule number 7. I'd rather die than let that happen. It was weird, I felt tired because I already regained my superpowers. Examining my right hand, I saw the pimple patches on my palm were crumpled, the makeup fading, hints of the crystals peeking at me. Then I flipped over, faced the ceiling, and punched the air several times. My fists moved so fast they made whooshing sounds. I wasn't good at punching, or any kind of fighting for that matter, but with my super strength and speed, I made it look cool and intimidating. I'm back, I whispered. He, this felt so good. I sensed my powers gradually returning while we were shopping. And as we were having dinner at a restaurant, I was tempted to test my strength on the silverware, but I wasn't an idiot to do that with Dean beside me. How about I find something to test it with now? I didn't want to break any of the furniture in the room. Maybe there was something I could use from the stuff we bought. Rummaging through the paper bags, I found the folder with my certificates from the lab testing. Right, I should take care of this. Visiting the police station again would be such a hassle. Checking more of the fine print, I found out I had to retest biannually for the next 3 years, then annually for 3 years after that. This was pretty okay, I guess. I wasn't even sure if in 3 years I'd still be alive, or if I'd even have control of my body. To be fair, I got off lightly. I was expecting to get tested every month or so since I lived at ground zero of a quite devastating seeding outbreak. I imagined that if something at Dumbry related was recorded in connection with my encounter with Kelsey, I'd be more closely monitored with that kind of history. Thanks to Johann for recommending lenient conditions, as well as Dr. Cornelio for approving them. I take it back that I want hotter coffee to splash on you. Something fell to the floor as I flipped through the documents. What was that? A small piece of rectangular black cardboard with gold borders. It had some writings and symbols on it in white ink. A black silk ribbon was tied in a neat bow through the hole on its top part. A bookmark? A fancy but old one, its sides frayed in places and traces of smoothened creases ran across it. There was a passage written in the middle, which read, 1 Enoch 7:4 And when men could no longer sustain them, the giants turned against them and devoured mankind. Huh. Was this Dr. Cornelius? Must be. He was the last one to handle my papers before I got them. I never took him for a religious guy. I expected someone in his line of work to be more on the atheistic side. But then again, someone regularly exposed to dangers of Adumbrey might turn to find comfort in religion. My recent experience taught me people reacted in unexpected ways to extreme situations. Enoch. Was this even from the Bible? It was ages ago, but if my memory served me right, Aunt Emily mentioned Enoch not being a canonical part of the Bible. She wasn't an actual aunt but a family friend I was instructed to call an aunt when I was a kid. Every social neighborhood gathering she attended, she always tried to preach about her religion. I couldn't remember the name, but it was a form of neocore Christianity, a reformation of a number of Christian sects to include the existence of Corbrings and Adumbrey in their teachings. She did make awesome braised brisket and apple pies, so she was always invited and everyone just put up with her. I couldn't forget her because she was insufferable and loud, and she forced me to sit beside her so she could teach me how to get to heaven. But even as a kid, I knew better than to throw a slice of apple pie at her. I just sat down, my hands on my lap, and listened like the good girl I was. She did say neocore Christianity included the books of Enoch in their Bible. Something about those old texts as proof that Adumbrey and Corbrings fought thousands of years ago, way before World War II. Probably a bunch of nonsense. The peculiar drawing on the top part of the bookmark must be the symbol of the neocore Christian denomination Dr. Cornelio was a member of. It could also be that someone just gave this to him. There were more scripture notations below the passage like, 2 Enoch 33:1, 3 Enoch 13:1-2, and 4 Enoch 20:5. These ones were handwritten using a red pen, and were hard to read with the black background. Was there even a fourth book of Enoch? I wondered, as I stowed the certificates and the strange bookmark in the drawer beside my bed. I could ask Johann to give the bookmark back to Dr. Cornelio the next time we met. Now, what could I test my strength on? Not the foldable bike, although it was hardest thing I got. Dean was so happy when she bought it for me as a gift that it bordered on creepy. She even wanted to buy me glasses, which I had to decline, explaining that my eyesight wasn't that bad and I'd buy a replacement tomorrow. She kept on telling me I was practically part of her family. It felt like something companies said when they were about to violate employee rights. Maybe I was just being cynical about this whole thing. I never really had a close friend, or rather, someone who considered me a close friend. Bike lock, I said. This could work. It was the one with the long shackle, not the chain lock type. I didn't even notice she bought this as well. How thoughtful. A renowned brand, and it felt sturdy in my hand, a good test subject. If I bent the shackle only a little, maybe I might still be able to use. Hey, if I had enough strength to bend it, then I should be able to fix it. Shish hit, I hissed through gnashing teeth, putting everything I had in bending the shackle. It creaked, but after a few seconds, I let go of it. I wasn't sure if it budged at all. Still straight? I said, holding it up against the light. Slightly bent. Good enough. I shouldn't have expected much. I did have super strength, but I wasn't that strong to destroy heavy-duty locks. I should still test out transforming though. As a rule, just a small letter, R, rule I shouldn't transform into Blanchette while inside Dean's house. Who knew if she might walk in on me, or if her future-seeing pet might negatively react in some way. However, I decided to make an exception this time, something I couldn't do with capital letter R rules. I excitedly jumped on my feet and ran to the vanity mirror in the bathroom. I scratched away the pimple patch covering the crystals on my palm, and concentrated. Gold liquid flowed upwards from the crystal, swirling in the air before condensing into a blob. It slowly solidified into the Blanchette mask, changing color from shiny gold to deep red. Here goes. I put it on as I watched myself in the mirror. The mask was going to become a face. One blink and Blanchette took the place of Errand. Hello there. I grinned, showing more of my beautiful teeth, each one long and sharp like spear tips. It had only been a few days since I last turned into Blanchette, but it felt like ages. Funnily enough, it wasn't my short stint as Pinot that made me miss my Blanchette face. Okay, that too, it was annoying being indestructible but physically weak, but rather the time I spent as a quote-unquote normal human again. I scraped my fangs with my claws, savoring the grating feeling. Then I snapped my jaws, the power of my jaw muscles making me giggle. My head rattled each time my upper and lower teeth collided with each other. Best feeling ever. It couldn't be denied that a normal human body sucked compared to this. I bit the air a few more times, harder and harder each time. Oops, not too loud. Dean or her sister might wonder about the strange noise. Of course, a normal human wouldn't be hunted down. The bid or the core bring normalcy had that going for it, I suppose. But this is awesome. Maybe I didn't want to be normal. A guy wham. I punched myself. Growl, GRW, I slowly said to my reflection, tapping the mirror with my clawed finger to punctuate each word or growl. Don't think that way, was what I meant to say to myself. Normal. Return to being normal. Did I want that? I shook my head. I shouldn't think about that now. Maybe I didn't want to know my own answer to that question just yet. I went out the bathroom, making little exited hops. I kicked aside the paper bags to make space. My claws swung across the air. Then I followed it up with kicks and punches. I controlled myself in case I inadvertently let out a battle roar as I got immersed in shadow fighting. Dario would probably laugh at my moves, or lack thereof. I would probably also laugh if I saw a video myself. All the monsters I met in my condo, how could have I fought them in my Blanchette body? So far, I fought as Blanchette with brute strength and inhuman speed, mostly guided by instinct, cooking up superficial battle strategies, relying on my ability to get stronger and heal myself by gorging on my enemies. That wasn't enough. I needed practice in actual fighting if I wanted to become stronger without transforming. I couldn't keep on relying on my giant werewolf mode. But how? Try copying martial arts videos online. Maybe I could get Myra to help me. Sounds like a dangerous idea. I stared at my claws, wondering if I could have won against Stella as a giant werewolf. I wasn't so sure she could destroy buildings with her laser. How would my werewolf body fare against that? And she was getting bigger and stronger as time went by, just like me. However, unlike me, she didn't have the constraint of needing to get hurt and then eating enemies to grow. That would have been a losing battle. Perhaps, that was why Spooky Errand advised me not to go the Blanchette route. Oh yeah, what did happen to Stella's corpse? I recalled Officer H something mentioned people stealing Adumbry body parts and selling them as charms. I removed my Blanchette face that was enough fun for the night and booted up the laptop I borrowed from Dean. I was going to buy my own once I got my credit cards sorted out. Poor Stella, I said with a smirk. I saw a picture of her gigantic body lying in the midst of destroyed buildings. It didn't look like the usual carcass of an Adumbry I saw on TV or that I had seen with my own two eyes. It was more like someone put the Statue of Liberty downtown and pushed it over. Most chunks of it were indistinguishable from the rubble around. I could pick out her feet and hands, those were easier to spot. I tried to find a picture of her face to see her expression when she died, but it was pretty hard to find since the bid carted the head off as soon as possible, it containing the Adumbry-infected brain and all that. Eventually, I ended up on Snippet, checking if people were sharing pictures and videos of the incident. Just curious. Maybe someone managed to get a picture of me. So far nothing. Mostly a bunch of bullshit that I never thought people would do. Like a group of people breaking through the police cordon around Stella's corpse as a pilgrimage to the site of a holy battle between Corbrings and Adumbry. There were those demonstrating trinkets and all sort of shit that people were supposed to buy to protect them from Adumbry. Police were also called in to stop a riot in a small neighborhood where the residents started accusing each other of being Adumbry. I was so fascinated by this nonsense that I kept on browsing Snippet despite my general dislike of social media. I came upon a video of the leader of the protesters encouraging everyone to join their cause of raiding the hospital where the survivors of the Adumbry attacks were housed. This must be what Officer H something meant by aftershocks. This city is going insane, I said. Bit by bit. A link to another video caught my eye. SVS plea was the caption. I clicked it and sure enough it brought me to the familiar page of the Silent Vigil Society, the small group of wackos founded by that woman managing the occult store at Serenade Bazaar. I think she went by the alias Initiate Reginus. Her face was the thumbnail of the video, ghost-like complexion even paler than mine, piercings of strange trinkets on her lips and ears. It was a pinned post on their page, and had thousands of reactions, a couple of hundred comments. She must be getting popular. Good for her. I shrugged as I clicked it, wondering what she was up to these days. Red Hood, she said as an opening, if you're out there, if you're watching this, the city needs your help. Save us. Fight for us. I owe my life to you, Red Hood. Reginus continued her open message to me, her ghostly face full of believable sincerity, the edges of her extremely thick eyeliners threatening to streak as tears rolled down her cheeks. She was so overcome with emotions she choked on her words. And that's why I believe with all my heart that you're not evil. No, you're different. I also believe I know our meeting was fated by the Mother Co. I paused the video and rolled my eyes. Wow, the drama. A small group of people, about 7 of them, crowded around Reginus to fit in the frame of the camera. The SVS pins they wore on their chests told me they were members of whatchamacallit. Oh yeah, the Silent Vigil Society. They surprisingly looked ordinary, just wearing regular people clothes ranging from a department store suit and tie, to a faded sweater, to the black leather getup of Reginus. Okay, hers wasn't so common, but not that weird as it was just her goth-inclined fashion sense. Still, they were very much unlike the image I had in mind of hooded figures practicing occultism and making blood ritual sacrifices deep in a cave. The small signs they weren't so normal were the mystical trinkets, earrings and amulets they wore, add in the occasional tattoo of some enigmatic symbol. And the candles. Can't forget about those. Each one of them, except Reginus who was operating the camera, held a small glass with a candle inside. It was like those thingies commonly used in memorials or prayer gatherings, and sometimes in nighttime protests too. I think those were called vigil candles. Oh. Because they're the Silent Vigil Society, I said with a snap of my fingers. Very nice commitment to branding, props to them. And where were they holding this mini vigil? I tapped the forward button a few times to check more of their surroundings as Reginus shifted along with the camera while giving her speech. They seemed to be in a small empty lot, covered by the shadows of old brick buildings to their sides, the only light coming from the camera and the candles. Forward a couple more minutes and Reginus stood up, again changing the angle of the camera. The people behind her parted a bit, allowing me to spot a tall blocky building with a green logo towering over the silhouette of the squat shops across the road. EFU Medical Center. If I was more familiar with the layout of La Esperanza, I could have pinpointed where they were, but they were certainly a comfortable 5-minute or so drive to the hospital where Julie was staying 5 minutes if there was no traffic. And no protests. Were they going to join the protests after whatever this is they were doing in the dark? I returned to the beginning of the video to listen to Reginus' message. After explaining it was destiny she met me, she narrated how I saved her, a very action-packed and embellished tale that would be amazing if made into a movie. Too bad all of it was a lie. I didn't save her at all. I did crash into her store, but I didn't pay her any mind and immediately went out. As for the snake mutant, my best buddy went nowhere near her. Instead, she was the one who chased us to get a video. I smiled. If it was fun to take credit for the work of others, it was even better to take credit for something that didn't happen but everyone else believed did. There was no one who could call her out on her lie unless the bid released the security camera footage of what happened inside Serenade Bazaar to the public. But why would they? They had a lot on their plate than to bother with a seemingly crackpot group of conspiracy theorists, a very small group at that. On the other hand, Reginus did have the video of my fight with my snake mutant buddy, which I suspected would give a lot of credibility to her lie. And just the fact she was brave enough to follow us or stupid, depending on how one viewed it, meant people were more likely to believe her, equating bravery, or heroism if really pushing it, with trustworthiness. I scrolled through the comments below the video and confirmed my hunch. Majority of the people watching it did buy her story that I saved her. Along with the actual video of me killing the snake mutant, they were also beginning to believe there were good Adumbri. I mean, I wouldn't call myself good per se. The SVS rejects the lies peddled by these supposed experts, Reginus burst out, her comrades aggressively nodding their heads. There is a way to cure those infected by Adumbri. It's out there, people. They say that there isn't, but we should not give up. No matter how slim the chance, we should try to save everyone infected, and not outright execute them. That's what it means to be human, being part of humanity. We don't abandon others. Surprisingly noble, I muttered. Whatever was going through in her head, she probably had good intentions. Or she just wanted to scam people. Hard to differentiate between those two at a glance. The SVS will not rest until we find the cure. She shook her fist at the camera. To start our research on the cure, the SVS is looking for Adumbri who can help us. Adumbri know humans. The SVS have known for years there are humans who successfully fought back the Adumbri within them. To find the cure, we have to find them. I raised my brow at that. I was already about to close the video and go to sleep, but what was this about? Just a conspiracy theory, or did they actually have information about those people? Bianca was also sure there existed a group who mastered their Adumbri powers without losing their human minds. Did Reginus know about them too? I kind of want to meet them. And the key, Reginus said, is Red Hood. Okay, I sigh. Disappointing. Turned out, they didn't know anything about the group Bianca was looking for. And what was up with calling me Red Hood? I preferred the name Dean gave me. Blanchette sounded so much better. Red Hood felt like a cartoon character. Many people will not believe this, she empathically said, but we have proof. Others may call us crazy, but they're the ones who don't want to open their eyes to the truth. The authorities are harassing me, making me go through tests. Harassing? Or the police simply wanted to test her because she was there at the Serenade Bazaar during an Adumbri incident? You and me both then. They will not silence us. We are exercising our right to free speech to inform the world that the cure is out there. I muted the video as Reginus continued to rant. I was on the verge of getting excited that I could find a way to look for the group of Adumbri Bianca wanted to meet. If I wanted to enjoy my powers while stopping Spooky Aaron from taking over my body, then those people seemed to be my best bet. Or the 2MS, when I came to think about it. But I seriously doubted if they would want to help me out. Dario's group might be the best choice if I was looking for a cure. They already have the suppressor. In a few years, perhaps they might find a permanent solution. I stared at Reginus' face while pondering the question, do I want to be cured? I turned the laptop off and went to bed. I'll answer that next time. Hi, guys. What are you watching? Dean asked the Hero Wannabe group crowding around Rio's phone. Hello, everyone. I meekly waved at them. We just arrived at Tulip's Nook, going through the restaurant and exiting to the patio at the back where we're going to hold our meeting. This place probably a couple of levels above Cindy's, a bit fancier family place. They even had a pergola entwined with vines over the al fresco dining area, but also still had a bit of a fast foody side. I bet they chose this venue in consideration of Dean. And also because there were no other customers here at this hour. We're watching a live news of EFU Medical Center, Everett explained. They were releasing patients with minor injuries since there's no reason to hold them anymore after they pass testing. Just need to return for more testing, I grumbled. There, Dean said, patting my back. Yours is not for 6 months. Anyway, Julie is not released yet, is she? Nope, still there. Johann checked this morning. This shit is insane, Rio exclaimed. He turned up his phone's volume and showed us what they were watching. A blockade was set up in front of the hospital manned by the National Guard. Beyond the hospital gates, the concrete barriers, the steel fences wrapped in barbed wires, throngs of protesters were trying to push through. They had multiplied several-fold from the last time I saw them on TV at the police station. Riot vehicles pushed them back with powerful water guns. It was like those zombie apocalypse movies that were all the fad about 5 years ago, except this one was crazier. Normal humans behaving like a zombie horde looked more disturbing than actual zombies. Officer H something, you were really right. This city is going nuts. Dean gasped, covering her mouth in shock. They're releasing the patients to that? No, they're not that dumb, said Rio. They stopped what they were doing when the protesters came attacked. Some head honcho guy was interviewed, and he said they're going to freaking fly the patients out of the place instead. A helicopter to a secret location or somewhere. The hell is that plan? What do you suggest they do then? Everett gestured at the phone showing the riots. They can't push away the people there without violence. The BID spokesperson just said they didn't want to escalate the situation for fear of another seeding outbreak. I nodded. Officer Herbert or Homer also mentioned something about the psyche of the people of this city. Myra sighed, shaking her head in disappointment at the human race. Or they could just keep them there. That's what they're already doing with the hospital staff. They're staying at the hospital, Dean said. And now, the hospital is besieged, Everett added. Poor them, said Dean. The patients and the staff. I can't believe this is happening. There was even this guy, Rio said, one of the patients supposed to be released today, who got so angry with the protesters that he rushed out and stabbed himself with a ballpen. Fascinating how people are behaving. Didn't that happen before? I asked, recalling I saw a similar incident on live TV when I was still in undergrad. I think an NBA player. Who was it again? I remember that. Big Nate Marshall's. Guy so good he single-handedly carried his team to snag the rings. There was a buttload of accusations he was in a Dunbury because of his godlike skills, so he stabbed himself after winning the championships to show he was a normal human. Oh, I do hope people won't harass me, I said. I got my certificates and all. But that NBA player was also tested and even held several press conferences to show his certificates, but people still didn't believe him. Dean hugged me. Don't you worry about that, she said soothingly. We'll protect you from those crazy people. In times like this, Everett said, people can't help but accuse each other of being in a Dunbury. He bowed his head with a somber expression on his face. Everyone else quieted down too. What was up? Oh, I remember. His grandparents were killed in the Labor Day purge. I bet his family was hounded by accusations of being a Dunbury for a long time, maybe even up to this day. I think that was enough for that topic. By the way, where's Dario and Johann? They said they're going to be late a bit, Everett said, checking his phone. Some problems at City Hall. Oh wait, they're here. He stood up and looked through the glass doors of the restaurant. Dario. Johann. Rio called, waving his arms at them so they could see him. What were they doing at City Hall? I asked Myra just for fun. She hesitated for a second, but decided to answer me, although she didn't face me. They were looking for the plans of the hospital. I see. Thank you, I said, trying to hold my laughter. Hey, guys, Dario said. Looks like we're complete. Sorry for the delay. It took me some time to get the blueprints for a funk. Johann spread a couple rolls of paper on the table. I got these ones easily enough. I've done this before for a couple of missions, he explained me and Dean. The problem is that these are old ones, back from the time the McHunters, one of their foundations, to be exact, was still operating the place. The McHunters also own the hospital, I said. They might have been pretty powerful in this city back then. Yes, but the government expropriated it after, you know. There have been many renovations since then, and floors were also added to the main building where Julie is. I couldn't find copies of the new plans. They're digitized and I can't hack the system to find them. Not to brag, but I probably can, I just don't have the time. What's the big deal, man? Rio said. It's just a hospital. Not like we're breaking into Fort Knox or the White House. With the guards around the hospital, Dario said, it's quite a secure place at the moment. We need to get to Julie tonight. Tonight? Dario held up 2 fingers. 2 reasons. Firstly, a memorial is going to be held for the people who died. The protesters, most of them, will certainly go there to stir things up. Which means, the attention of the police and the National Guard will be shifted there too. Secondly, the leader of the protesters made an ultimatum to the mayor that unless he transfers the casualties of the Adumbri attacks out of the city, they'll storm the hospital within 2 days. We have no choice. We have to go tonight. After making sure no one else was within earshot, Dario gestured for all of us to pull our seats closer. Then he turned to Dean and me. I already told Johann on the way here what happened during our mini-mission yesterday, so I'll also bring both of you up to speed. Because of the protests blocking the streets, we had to leave the car at 17th and continue on foot to Marshall. We did make it to the hospital, and although they were very strict of the identity of people they let inside, Myra was able to get in because she's a Melcher student. We occasionally have lectures and practical exams at the hospital, Myra elaborated. It wasn't that suspicious I came there. Just an excuse I needed to get some forms for class. The whole state of the place, Dean said, confused. I assumed they'd bar all visitors. Dario answered, pure luck we got there about 15 minutes before the whole place went into lockdown because of the escalating violence. Before that happened, many people were there, mostly families of the transferred patients checking up on them. He then gave us a brief story of how Myra distracted the staff at the front office so Sneak could go through the files on a computer. I had to stop myself vomiting because of the smell of the dumpster, Rio whined. You guys couldn't find me a better place to summon. I was there with you, Everett said. The smell wasn't that bad. And it was the only secluded place within range of the hospital. Picture this, me concentrating on typing on a keyboard using Sneak's finger-sized arms as shitty smell frolicked up my nose. Frolic? Myra repeated with an exaggerated British accent. Stop being a drama queen. I was waiting for alarms to go off. Flashing red lights, blaring sirens, screaming people. Help. A gray gremlin is on the keyboard. Something like that. Hospitals don't have that kind of alarm, you idiot, she said, elbowing his arm. Fire alarms maybe, but not those ones like you broke in a secret military base. Hey, I'm just saying I was expecting the guys watching the security cams to spot Sneak on their screens. He wasn't on invisible mode. Seems like we can't expect people to be diligent on their jobs nowadays. That's rich coming from you. Continuing on, Dario said before the two of them could argue more. Myra and Rio did find Julie's room number, but they couldn't get to her because the way to that building was guarded by cops. Perhaps if we had the time, they could have done more reconnaissance. But the order came to lock down the whole hospital and the surrounding streets. Myra folded her arms. I still think I had a shot of finding Julie if we pushed on and took advantage of the commotion. It was total chaos when all the visitors were herded out of the hospital. I told you to abort because it's too risky, he sternly replied. This is the middle of the city. If you do get discovered, you'll be fighting the police and the National Guard. Myra clicked her tongue, irritated at Dario shooting her down. I can handle. It's not a question of whether you can win against them or not. You'll be fighting against humans. Do you want stain your hands with the blood of innocent people? No, but bid agents will eventually come, don't forget about them. And assuming you successfully snuck your way to Julie, what will you do? I'm the one with the ability to erase her memory. She turned away from us, gazing at the small fountain in the middle of the garden. You're right, I also really don't want to cause any more innocent casualties. Dario stared at her for a couple of seconds, his eyes narrowed. He then sighed and said, after that, all of us scouted the surroundings and took notes, the walls of the hospital, the placements of the guards, the camps of the protesters. However, considering the rapidly evolving situation, the intel we got yesterday of the layout of area is no longer accurate. We'll have to go back there later a couple of hours before our mission to see what's what. Let's move on to let's order first. He waved at the waiter who courteously hovered by the door several feet away, waiting for us to finish our discussion. When he approached us, the waiter glanced at the plans on the table. Dario noticed and loudly chatted about our project for our architecture course, throwing technical terms around like he knew what he was talking about. Maybe he did. As everyone ordered food and drinks, I pondered my course of action. I obviously wanted to have Julie's memories erased, duh. Me above everyone else here. But I couldn't contribute anything because I was supposedly a normal human, with only Myra and Johan knowing my secret. I still had no clue if they told Dario. Let's discuss the obstacles while we wait for our food, Dario said. First, we have to get past the protesters. Excuse me, I began to say, ruining the cool start of a planning montage. Should I stay here? I'm going to be useless in this whole breaking in the hospital thing. You have to be here, Dean empathically said. We're a group. No, yeah, I mean we're a group. But isn't it better if I didn't know about your plan just in case I don't know? The fewer people know about it the better, I guess. And it's not like I'll be of any help. I'm sure you can contribute to our plans, said Dario. We are a group, yes. The more brains working together the better. Not always, said Rio. Myra snorted. Not with your brain. Dario again ignored his teammates. And we'll find a part for you, Erend. You can be a lookout, keep us updated of what's happening with the protesters, the movements of the police. From a distance, cut in Dean. From a distance, right? We don't want Erend near any danger. She put an emphasis on the we. Those protesters could turn violent any second, they are violent now. I can take care of myself, I asserted. And I want to have a part in this. Erend has been through a lot, Everett said to Dean. I'm sure she knows how to deal with danger. Dario also assured her, she'll be far away from any riots. Dean pursed her lips, but relented, nodding her consent like she was my mother or something. He said, we'll need all the help we can get, a lookout isn't a small part. If anything happens, Erend can decide for herself if the situation is getting dangerous and leave. Does he know my secret? I felt like his actions weren't that of someone knowingly sitting at the same table with an Adumbri. Dario was the leader of a group fighting Adumbri. It was a no-brainer he'd want me, an actual Adumbri, a real one unlike those of the 2MS, eliminated. Not that apparent, but I could tell he was a dangerous person. He didn't seem affected by the deaths of a couple of people during the Sanders fire, unlike Myra and Everett. Maybe that was why Myra and Johan didn't tell him about me. Or maybe Dario was just really good at hiding things. I'm not so sure about him. I feel like a tree, I said. They gave me quizzical looks. You know. A kid playing a random tree in a school play. You guys are just giving me a role so I wouldn't feel bad. There was nervous chuckling at first, then everyone laughed after I told them I was joking, everyone except Myra. The planning montage started. Cue in the tense music with subtle rising crescendo. Even though I wasn't going to have an important part, I still listened with half an ear, trying to teach myself practical skills like doing illegal stuff. Going past the ring of protesters was easy enough, the perimeter of the National Guard would be the hard one to crack. And once they were inside, they also had to move about undetected. If the hospital was operating normally, Dario could have just waltzed in and do his magic on Julie like he did with Romello before. Babies get kidnapped from hospitals all the time, Rio said, leaning back on his chair. Myra unexpectedly didn't hit him, but just grunted her distaste. What? I'm just saying this would have been a piece of cake if not for the protesters making the situation worse. The food arrived and the planning continued while we ate, discussing how to get past security we had no idea consisted of. There was even a debate on whether they should try to take over the security room to make their movements easier. But that'd also leave a trace that they were there in the first place, and would signal to the bid that there was something important with the patients at the hospital. One thing is clear, Dario said. We need Dean front and center. I will be there, she said. It's really a different thing with you around, Everett said. Rio snickered beside him, catching the double meaning. Nearly 20 minutes later and they had a crude plan. My part, like Dario said earlier, was going to be a nearly useless lookout, far away from anything remotely dangerous or helpful, which meant Dean was satisfied with it. The memorial starts at 9 p.m., Dario said. The mayor scheduled it at that time so they could have a prayer vigil as well. I mentally snickered, remembering Reginus and her tiny group. Dario went on, I suspect he set it up like that in hopes the religious groups attending to pray and there's going to be many of them will be the buffer against protests. Smart stuff, Rio said. Pitting the masses against each other. I'm glad I voted for that guy. You care about voting? Myra asked incredulously. And don't forget that guy likely helps out the 2MS. Dario said, let's say 7 p.m. we start to move in position and update our plans accordingly. By the way, errand, Myra said, surprising me. You left your phone at your condo, right? Like, it's gone. What's up with her now? I nodded. My phone, among other belongings, all of my belongings are gone, yeah. I'm just borrowing one of Dean's phones until I get money from Mom and buy a replacement. Why do you ask? What's your new number now? If there's something important, we can't just keep calling Dean. Yeah, I said. I gave all of them my number. After we were done eating and about to go our separate ways, Dean said to me, Errand, I'm going to Cresthorn for my afternoon class. Want to come with me? You can study at the library. Or I can drop you off at my house. Are we required to go to Cresthorn for class? I thought it's only students who feel they can safely travel to the university during all this nonsense and the rest can just attend online. That's right, but I miss meeting other people. Dean grinned. Oh, you know. Extrovert people stuff. You won't understand. Although I'm not sure who is going to be there. Perfect. I think I'll buy glasses this afternoon. We can do that together late. I'll just buy on my own, I insisted. She was getting weird these days. I have nothing to do at Cresthorn or at your house anyway, might as well get this done. But what if? Dean, you shouldn't be so worried of Errand. It was Myra who said that. Mild shock, I sarcastically thought. She subtly nodded at me. She can take care of herself. Johann always scolds me when I get too protective of him just because he's a normal human. There was something weird with the way she said, normal human. Fine, Dean said. Her golden hair bounced as her shoulders dropped in surrender. But keep me updated when you get home, okay? Okay, Mom, I said, sticking my tongue out at her. Was this the right place? Where was Myra? The fountain she mentioned in her text was here, but I wasn't sure how many were there in this mall. I approached the guy at the food stall selling cinnamon rolls beside it, and he confirmed it was the only one. Dean dropped me off at this mall on her way to university. I fibbed there was an optical shop here where I could get an eye exam and order new glasses. Well, not exactly a lie because there was really an optical shop here. I checked. But I was just going to buy cheap fake glasses from the department store. Later, I'd have to think of some reason why it took me a long time to return to her house. She was being very nosy nowadays, bordering on controlling. I puzzled over what could have triggered the change. Was she intermingling her heroic purpose with my safety? She did volunteer to protect me at the start of all of this shit. Technically, it was her first mission, a personally imposed mission at that. And the one night I left her care was the night the two MS attacked. It might have dealt a pretty huge blow on her self-image, although that was really on me for insisting to go back to my condo. So far, this was my best explanation of Dean's abrupt change, but I might be wrong. I've been wrong about her before. One thing was certain, even though Dean was my closest ally, I should start watching my back around her. But enough of that, I should focus on my meeting with Myra. Was this the right decision? I replayed my thought process in deciding to come here, making sure I wasn't doing this because the danger was fun. It was a creeping concern. I was getting used to danger and could no longer approximate flight instincts as time went by. Myra hadn't attacked me since our little encounter at Sanders Mall, so it seemed like it was really a mistake on her part. Her reaction to my revelation, that she was the reason I became an Adumbry, confirmed this. And she also hadn't attacked me even after she knew I was no longer human. She was, from what I could tell, a relatively good person by her irritated reaction each time someone brought up the Sanders fire, a reaction of a person bothered by her conscience. Her personality was very consistent thus far, so I was certain I had a good read on her. I stared at the pimple patch-covered crystals on my right palm. The main reason I wanted to meet her wasn't to know the truth. That was also important, I suppose, so I could better plan for my survival, but to get help in practicing my powers. Okay, that's a lie. That wasn't the main reason. It was because I wanted to be close friends with her before making her suffer for all the wrongs she committed against me. This was my modus operandi since I was a kid. I stopped myself grinning like an idiot in public while thinking about what I'd do to Myra. "Errand," a voice behind me called. I turned around. "Oh, Myra, hi." So," she looked around, fidgeting uncomfortably, her eyes landing on the food stall. "Have you eaten? I can buy you cinnamon. We just ate, remember?" "Oh yeah." She exhaled. "I'm sorry." "What?" There, I said it. "Anyway, we should go some other place to continue talking." "A secluded restaurant?" I know a cafe." "We should go to our hideout, or we could choose any of the other abandoned buildings near it." "Huh? Why there?" She wanted to go an isolated place. "If we're going to show each other our abilities, it's best if we do it there." I blinked, thinking rapidly. "Just the two of us?" "Yeah. Johan has work. We haven't told anyone else about you." "Ah. I'm not going to do anything to you." She grimaced, realizing what she said. "I know it's hard for you to believe this, but you can trust me." That's all I can say for what that's worth. Do I go with her? Obviously, duh. I could foresee a lot of drama was going to happen here. I wouldn't miss this for the world. Nervous? Or incensed? How about scandalized? Scandalized was too much. Timid with a spattering of righteous indignation was what I settled for. Insert chef's kiss. I'd update my face, letting it grow as its own separate person, as the situation developed. That was what it entailed, maintaining many faces. I do love drama, especially creating it. You're good back there. Myra checked my reflection on the rearview mirror. I turned away. I am fine. Let's go then. Okay, I monotonously replied. I was in the back seat of Myra's car, sitting diagonally behind her. She told me to ride shotgun, and that was the polite choice, but I refused, reasoning I didn't want to be close to her. Plenty of ways to interpret what I said, and I left it up to her imagination. From her facial expression, she assumed I hated her, repulsed by the idea of being close to her. Which wasn't true. Hate. Anger. Grudge. Not really, not anymore. I simply wanted to start implementing rule number 4 now. That's it. And maybe have some fun along the way, since this was going to be a long project. It was just an unfortunate coincidence the bother Myra inflicted on me was of such gravity I had to make her suffer a lot as well, as per rule number 4. Weird to say, but this was nothing personal. As we moved through traffic, going the long way to avoid the shit show of the protests and riots downtown, I stared at Myra's metallic blue hair, wondering what was going through her head. She might also think I didn't want to sit beside her for my safety. And that was the real reason I chose to sit here. I'd have more time to react if she decided to attack me. From this position, the fastest attack she could do without alerting me would be shooting spikes from her back, piercing through the driver's seat, and then stabbing me. Our diagonal orientation was the furthest distance possible in this car compared to if I sat beside her directly behind her. I also had my hand on the car door handle, ready to jump out at a moment's notice. Did she lock this? I gave it a slight tug and confirmed she didn't. She might have heard me checking the door because she repeated her earlier offer, "Are you sure you don't want me to drink the suppressor?" "I'll do it if it'll make you feel safe." "There's no need," I answered curtly. I didn't want her to become powerless, so she couldn't pull bullshit like egging me on to hurt her as payment for attacking me. It was also easier to guilt trip her when she was stronger than me. "I want to show you can trust me," she said. "I'll drink it, then you can check if I trust you." "What?" "I trust that you won't hurt me." Right. I won't." We didn't speak to each other the rest of the way, letting the hum of the air conditioning fight back the deafening silence inside the car. Myra concentrated on the road in front of her, not even glancing at the rearview mirror again, or so much as turn her head that she'd see me in her peripheral vision. Was this to show she wasn't suspicious of me? That she trusted me since I said I trusted her? I might attack her from behind after all. She must be really sincere then. The road turned rough as we entered the abandoned development project of the McHunters. We passed by the rundown buildings at its borders. The homeless of the city have taken shelter here, establishing some sort of small community that thrived on the kindness of charities operating food banks nearby. People in rugged clothes peeked out from the windows. The ones out on the street stopped to stare at our car. I turned around and looked through the rear windshield. They went back to whatever they were doing, not paying us any more mind. A couple blocks along and there were no more completed structures. There were also no more signs of people, nothing for them here, just the vast concrete jungle that looked like ruins of our modern civilization a time traveler might come upon 1,000 years into the future. Myra?" I said. She jolted. Our eyes met on the rearview mirror. "Myra, maybe we can go in one of these buildings instead. How about that one?" I pointed at a boxy 4-story building, shorter but more complete than its neighbors. "Our hideout is still further ahead, and we're not sure if others are hanging out there." "Yeah, sure." I became more confident this wasn't a trap because I picked the location. If she insisted on a different building, I might have already summoned my Blanchette mask. Myra parked the car beside the building I chose, partially hiding it from the street behind a wild growth of shrubbery. Then I followed her inside, climbing through one of the large windows on the wall. As I expected, it was just an empty floor with the support pillars evenly spaced across, not unlike our hideout. The difference was that the walls and columns already had a smooth cement finish. This was also a way smaller place, with the columns closer together, giving me an advantage in a fight against Myra. The columns could restrict her movements and provide cover against her spikes. And since there were many openings, I had my pick of escape routes. I considered whether I should speak up first. However, it would be better if I waited for Myra to initiate the conversation. "Stay there," she said, while she continued walking. About 20 feet away, she turned around and faced me. She willed herself to meet my gaze. "Since you didn't want me to drink the suppressor, this should be enough distance to make you feel safe." This desolate place was so quiet, devoid of the usual sounds of the city, that I could clearly hear her normal speaking voice. "I already said I trusted you." I wasn't going to let her get away with scoring good guy points being all considerate and shit. And even if she said this was for my benefit, she was certainly also wary I'd attack her. She took a deep breath and slowly exhaled, shaking her hands as if to psyche herself up. "I suppose first things first again, I'm sorry." "Sorry for what?" I snapped. You know. The whole thing. A proper apology would be appreciated." Myra scratched her head. "I'm sorry for attacking you." "There. I know that's not enough." "Attacking? More like trying to kill me." "Yeah, that. Sorry." "And then what?" "Huh? And then what?" I repeated, stomping my foot on the ground. Myra gulped, still visibly hesitant to admit her fault, but also wanting to make amends. She nodded like she was agreeing not with me but with her thoughts, and said, almost yelling, "I'm very sorry I tried to kill you and pushed you into becoming an Adumbri." Wow. Her apology caught me off guard that I almost sarcastically clapped. Instead, I pulled on my clothes and looked at the floor just in case I couldn't control myself grinning. "Thank you for that even if it's belated." She stepped forward. "So, you forgive. But it doesn't mean I forgive you." I wasn't really expecting to be forgiven. And an apology can't turn me back into a human." Myra didn't have an answer to that. Both of us stood in silence for a while. I didn't move. She didn't either. Let her emotions fester. A minute, maybe two. How long should I keep this up? I just wanted a sign of the emotional turmoil inside her before pressing on with my psychological attacks. "Errand," she began to say, holding her arm out as if trying to reach me even though we were far apart. Then she closed her mouth, unsure of what to say, letting her hand fall to her side. "Break time's over. Maybe you don't believe you're the reason I became an Adumbri." "No. I mean yes, I believe. You're hoping I'm not really an Adumbri." "I can see it in your eyes," I said, pointing an accusatory finger at her. Of course, I couldn't. I was just pulling shit out of my ass. How you wish it isn't true, right? Well, it is. I suddenly knelt down and punched the floor, cracking it. Dust clouds billowed away from me. Myra instinctively crossed her arms in front of her, her forearms covered by weaves of bark armor. As she lowered her arms, I saw her mouth gaped in disbelief even though she already knew I wasn't human, still vainly hoping this was all just a huge lie. "I'm not going to attack you," I said icily. "I don't just randomly try to murder people. No, this isn't what it looks like." Her bark armor unraveled, the dark tendrils sinking back into her skin. "I'm not going to fight you. I was just surprised. As you can see, I'm not human anymore. Because of you. I'm not denying that, okay? I get it. And unlike you, I didn't have a choice because my only other option is dying. If I'm truly the cause, then Maybe you're thinking I might be an Adumbri long before we met," I said. Her eyes widened, shocked I apparently read her mind. She didn't want to feel guilty, so it was natural she'd find any excuse to exonerate herself. You'd like that to be the truth, wouldn't you? She mouthed no, but no sound came out, betraying her actual thoughts. I continued with more intensity, walking a couple of steps closer to her. But I'm sure that by now you know with certainty I wasn't in a Dunbury before you tried to murder me. I had tests before enrolling to Alois University, just like you did. I don't have the suppressor or anything like that. I bet you even asked Johann to check my records, am I right? And you saw nothing there. Yes, I had him do a background check on you. I was just trying to make sure, she stammered, that what you said was true. You hit me with a spike, I said. No one pulled me away from the door to save me, there was no one else there. I tried to escape from you while holding my bleeding stomach closed. Remember the locker full of blood? I hid there, waiting for death. I am sorry, was all she managed to say, her voice cracking. If I was in her position, I wouldn't know what else to say either. If I had already been in a Dunbury, I said, I wouldn't have bled that much from one spike. In that locker, she said, her voice almost a whisper. I walked a few more steps closer to better hear her. Was that where an Dunbury spoke to you? Yes. I see. I removed the pimple patches on my palm and began the summoning. Gold liquid swirled up from the crystal, illuminating our dimly lit surroundings with golden light. Myra had a confused expression, uncertain of what I was showing other than that I had weird powers. Then the gold liquid turned red as it solidified and formed into jaws. I held the Blanchette mask in my hands. She gasped, recognizing the mask even though she had seen it only once. Knobs erupted all over her skin, slowly growing. But she closed her eyes and calmed herself. The spikes receded. Are you going to blame me for accepting the Dunbury's offer to save me? I knew a lot of people would. I considered bringing Kelsey into the argument given her sister's situation. Myra would be more understanding but decided to hold on to that card for a bit. No, she said. I don't know how my power works, just that if I wear this I change. The mask dissipated in the air. You already met her. Yeah. She massaged her neck, perhaps unconsciously. I can't control myself when I transform, like I'm a different person, I said. I wasn't going to tell her the truth about my powers. I guess I'm technically a different person now anyway with an Dunbury inside me. Am I even a person? As a law student, I know I don't have any human rights. I'm sorry I tried to kill you, Myra said, obviously changing the topic because she couldn't give me a straight answer. I can explain what happened that day, at least the things I know. I'm not sure how to tell my story, and why I need your help. My ears pricked upon hearing that, but I didn't show any more reaction. But I'll do my best, starting from the beginning. She sat on a chunk of a broken pillar. This is going to be long. I plopped myself down on the dusty floor. Beginning. Our parents died when Kelsey and I were just kids. They were fanatic members of a cult led by someone who later turned out to be an Dunbury. The Bid raided their church. Mom and Dad were either eaten by the Dunbury or killed by the Bid. Either way, good riddance. I couldn't remember much of them because they were always doing this or that for their cult. Our aunt, Mom's sister, was the one who took care of us during all that time and also after our parents died. She not only gave us a place to stay, but also supported us as we were regularly tested because of what happened to our parents. Okay, wow. Myra wasn't kidding when she said she'd start from the beginning. This was perhaps too much beginning. I didn't care for all of this shit. Fast forward this please. I'm not turning this into a sob story, she said defensively. I'm just giving you a background of what could have possibly caused Kelsey to turn into an Dunbury. It might be our parents, I don't know. Didn't you tell me it was because she was sick? Something terminal. That was a lie. Sorry. Nothing new then, I snidely remarked. If she really had a terminal illness and was miraculously recovering possibly due to an Dunbury, doctors would report her to the Bid. She'd get tested and executed. And that's how I was sure. What are you talking about? It might be because of Kelsey I became infected. What? That can't be. I stood up to give more oomph to my words. And then you came along, trying to kill me, I said, pushing me over the edge and forcing me to rapidly transform. I know, that. No. It's the only explanation I can think of why I became an Adumbry this fast. I wasn't sure if this actually was the case. I just wanted to emotionally hit her some more by blaming her sister too. But as the words came out of my mouth, I was beginning to believe that my guess could be true. Myra shook her head, but it wasn't to disagree with me. I can't say for sure you're wrong. If it was also because of Kelsey, then I apologize for that too. It's not worth much, I know. Like you said, it's not going to turn you back into human. But I'll try to make it up to you. I'm not sure how. But I will. Ah, sucks she surrendered this fast. I could have had more fun. Yeah, I'm not turning back, no point fretting over this. Anyway, so, Kelsey is really an Adumbry? And you joined Dario's team because of, let me guess, the suppressor. Yes, the suppressor momentarily made Kelsey human again, at least physically. I didn't care back then about the 2MS, but I'm fighting them because Dario promised me that when a cure was developed someday, the professor will smuggle one for Kelsey. Makes sense, I said. Just a typical origin story. Boring. And well, Dean too. Both of us were unlucky we met Kelsey that day. Come to think of it, it wasn't because of just Kelsey, it was because you attacked us afterwards. We had nothing to do with whatever happened to Kelsey. If you just left us alone, we wouldn't have gotten dragged into this. Repeating sorry over and over might make it lose its meaning, but I really. Why did you do it? She kicked a pebble near her foot, focusing on it as it rolled across the floor. I joined you guys going to Cresthorn to check Kelsey's locker. She left me a note inside. I can't tell you the exact content, but it made me suspect you guys were involved in her kidnapping. Kidnapping? Not suicide. We're not, as you might have figured out by now. Does this have something to do with you needing my help? You finally figured out Kelsey's note? Yes. I'm not sure if I correctly understood her message to me, but if I'm right, I'll need all the help I can get, and I don't have many options. If you can't tell me what the note said, fine, but can you at least tell me who we're up against? I used we intentionally. Her face brightened at the hint I was on her side despite what she had done to me, but then her face fell again as she told me our enemy. Dario and the professor probably have Kelsey. Dario and the professor kidnapped Kelsey? An unexpected development. Or was Myra going insane over the loss of her sister, just throwing accusations at anyone? I said, I thought you're supposed to be the good guys. Good guys, Myra pensively mumbled. At the risk of sounding philosophical, are any of us actually on the side of good? I can't even justify a morally gray side because there's an objective good in our society. We are vigilantes, and what does the law say on that errand? Vigilantism is not legally justified. Using this artificial core inside of us makes it even worse. It's the product of a government project, but that doesn't make it any less illegal. This was made through human experimentation, not to mention using a stolen origin core from the corebrains. Convincing anyone we're the good guys just because we fight Adumbry is a long stretch. Okay, not the good guys. But Dario and the professor, aren't you at least on the same side? Or am I missing something here? Same team. I can't say we're all on the same side, I don't even know what our side is supposed to be. Dario told us we're helping a lone bid scientist defeat an Adumbry conspiracy ring embedded in the government. But other than that, we don't know anything else about this professor guy. None of us have met, or even talked to him. Johan and I suspect something way bigger than just a single scientist is behind Dario. He's working for some secret organization. I said, reading between the lines. Was she hesitant saying it outright for fear I'd back out of helping her? What made you think this? Did you discover something? I dunno, some concrete evidence. Decide for yourself if this is concrete evidence, Myra answered. A couple of days after our Eve mission, Johan visited my apartment. She explained what she learned from him about the bid taking jurisdiction of the investigation, deputizing the city police one of their powers under the Panderton Act and using the additional manpower to review the massive amounts of leads coming in. The bid turned the huge parking lot of the LEPD headquarters into their base of operations, like a mini tent city. Johan took every opportunity he had, making up all kinds of excuses, just to hang out at that place and gather info from his friends and other people he knew. And he found something out, I said. Evidence connected to us. Myra raised a brow, surprised. How did you know? Or you're guessing? A gnawing feeling I had since our Eve mission. A lie. I hadn't thought about this at all. The truth was I had other things on my mind, such as all the fun and excitement I had at Eve, meeting new friends and killing them, and the whole thing with Bianca too. Hey, I deserved a couple of days of relaxation after going through that shit. Unfortunately, you're right on that one. It's to be expected. It was a massive bid operation. I kept my voice neutral, hiding my annoyance at myself for being so carefree. I just offhandedly assumed the explosion wiped our tracks. Apparently, it didn't. I ticked off my fingers, enumerating possible evidence I thought of only now, stuff I should have already considered after escaping Eve. They'd have surveillance videos of the comings and goings at the club before the raid, that should include when we arrived. There should be files from the security cameras of the Eve itself, recording me and Dean inside, assuming those survived the explosion, probably not. And I guess there are witnesses who survived. What did I miss? The agents inside the club, Myra said. Johan found out they were transmitting in real time everything they saw to the bid command overseeing the raid. You're right on the evidence going missing part, but Johan didn't do anything. What? Everything connected to us were deleted by someone else. Huh? I don't what? After Johan discovered the evidence, that was late Sunday night, he informed Dario, who told him to stand down, assuring him the police won't notice us. There were tons of other people there anyway. Since Johan helped you with your tests, you must know the type of guy he is. He couldn't just leave it up to chance and decided to find a way to wipe our tracks the next day. But, they were no longer there. Could it be just some error? I said. Or it might be the 2MS. Yeah, it must be them. They're trying to hide. I also thought of that, but it's not possible. For example, there was a video from the surveillance team watching the entrance of Eve. Johan said when he saw it, it was a long one which included us posing as Bianca's crew. But the next time he checked it, the part with us was gone, just cut out somewhere in the middle. The same thing happened with the recordings of 3 other cameras pointed at Eve's entrance. These are too specific to be computer errors. And if it was the 2MS, they'd want to destroy all the evidence. Why delete just the parts with us? It's like someone was protecting us, I finished her statement. What do I make of this? Oh well, I was still walking around, free as an Adumbree could be. No harm done. Thanks to this mysterious person or people who cleaned our tracks. However, I still wasn't sure if I was going to buy this secret organization story Myra was selling, even if she was going to put it on sale with a 50% discount. Maybe it was all Johan's work and she was just twisting the truth to convince me to help her find her sister, presenting a fake scary enemy to make me side with her rather than Dario. Myra recounted a couple more missions from before Dean and I joined them where they had been certain the police were going to find them, but nothing happened. If all of these were true, then I had to concede she was right that some deeper shit was going on here. And I was beginning to see Johan couldn't have possibly done this on his own. Hiding this much evidence would need people in high places, at least that was what I learned from some cases I studied in law school. I let the turmoil in my mind show on my face as I knotted my brows. It sounds insane, Myra said. I get you. I know you're not going to be convinced this easily because I could be making all of this up and there's no way you could check. How about when you were kidnapped by the 2MS? I held my breath and exaggeratedly tensed my body, faking trauma from that experience. I am sorry, she hastily said. What I'm referring to was the police investigation that followed. It's nothing, I said, shaking my head as if to chase away bad memories. Just stuff I want to forget. What was that about the investigation? The police looking for Romello's attackers? They never did find out about me. She intently looked at me. Why do you think the police didn't know about you? Because Dario. Romello doesn't remember you, but his statement can't be the only evidence. During the time he was unconscious at the hospital, the police should have traced his route for the day. Normal police work. Plenty of security cameras and witnesses, especially at the train station. In fact, Johan can't find any progress reports on Romello's case. I had to give it to her that the thing with Romello didn't add up. And I never thought about it before. Another example of my complacency that should be squashed if I wanted to continue living as a human in society. He's also a student from our school, Myra said. Frickin' Eloise Federal University. A law student to boot. And isn't he pretty famous? Like some prodigy? No, he's famous for coming from a very poor family and being accepted to Cresthorn Law, and also for his various advocacies. He has all sorts of awards and stuff. Then that's even more newsworthy, isn't it? But there's nothing about his attack on TV in the papers. There's no further investigation. Come on, someone is covering for us. I don't know why, but I'm sure they're there. Dean told me in detail about what happened to Kelsey when you guys met her. Myra closed her eyes. That she scratched her face, deeply wounding herself. Her bones cracked loudly. Her body contorted. She was shrieking, yelling she wanted to die a human. I knew she was losing control of herself. Her shoulders shuddered, her fists tightly balled up on her lap. Myra, I really hated to comfort others. What should I then? A light bulb suddenly lit up in my head. You said you joined Dario's team because they were giving you supply of the suppressor for Kelsey, I said, finally seeing everything come together. Yes, that's right. Myra's eyes lit up as she realized I understood what happened. The professor even developed a special type of suppressor for her that lasts for 12 hours at a time, an extra concentrated version. She took the suppressor every day, including the day she disappeared. I made sure of it before I left the house first for my 7 a.m. class. But she lost control of herself, I said. Someone administered the diluter to her or not. What if the suppressor was just a bad batch or something? Myra said. I nodded. That's just like saying all the police computers had an error and wiped all evidence of us. You're right, I said. Unlike totally not caring about the aftermath of the Eve mission, I decided to dedicate brainpower to analyze the implications of this. If I wanted to survive in this cruel world as a monster everyone would just love to burn at the stake, I should start to be more prudent. Since we're already talking about the suppressor, said Myra, just think about what it is. A chemical that can momentarily turn an Adumbri back into a human. In our case, artificial core brings. But it also worked for you. Yes, I understand what you're getting at. It's not a cure, but close to one. Closer than anyone has gotten. A chemical like this can change the world. But we haven't heard about it, so it must be top secret. A cure for Adumbri. This should be the most heavily guarded item in a bid base. But the professor is giving it to us like free candy samples at the mall. Myra stood up on the debris she used as a chair. The professor can't be stealing all of this. They're intentionally giving it to us. That's the only explanation. For all we know, we're also being experimented on. I gritted my teeth at the thought. Someone bothering me, not just bothering, more like controlling me. I already had spooky errand inside my head, thank you very much, I had enough people trying to control me. Myra also shared that Dario provided them with weapons. Guns, grenades, he even had minefield mines. He's not a normal person, she said. Someone is arming and sending us off to fight the 2MS and the Adumbri. I was listening to her with only one ear. This secret organization could have had something to do with me becoming an Adumbri. And even if they didn't, they'd certainly want to capture me like they did Kelsey. So far, they hadn't openly done anything to me except protect me behind the scenes. What do I do? That's why I'm looking for allies, Myra said. She jumped down from the rock and approached me. Just anyone who can help me. Right now, I only have Johann, and as much as he wants to help, he's just a normal human. I have powers myself, but I know it won't amount to much if Dario and the professor are actually backed by a secret organization. How about Rio and Everett? I asked even though I already knew the answer. They have their reasons. Accepting the artificial core and joining Dario mostly boils down to revenge against Adumbri. We've all fought together, got through so many life or death situations, and I trust the two of them. I am also 100% sure they'll never join me rescuing Kelsey if they ever discover the truth about her. Somewhere down the line those guys are bound to know. Or Dario might reveal it to them. That one too. Myra looked at the ceiling in deep thought. Actually, even if Dario doesn't say anything, Rio and Everett don't have a reason to trust me over him. I don't have anything concrete. Just, what do you call that in law? Something that's not direct evidence. Not a chance they'll change their minds. If someone close to them became an Adumbri, then it'll be different. Maybe Dean could be. She shook her head. This is why I tried looking for an Adumbri to help me. Real Adumbri. The only one I know is Red Hood. I raised a brow at her. She awkwardly grinned, and said, Red Hood, you know? Your transformation. There was a video of you at Serenade Bazaar and a lot of people are calling you Red Hood because you have a hood that's colored red. I get that, I said chuckling. I've settled on the name Blanchette, by the way. I don't like Red Hood. Blanchette? A long story. So, why look for me? Oh, right, you didn't know it was me yet, why look for the Adumbri that bit you, is what I meant. I just don't know who else could help me. I assumed Red Hood is an Adumbri helping new Adumbri who couldn't control their powers yet, like you, for example. And then. What did you just say? I cut in with an enraged voice. Let's focus back to Myra. At this point, I honestly didn't care she lied again, but a face was a face. You already knew I was an Adumbri? Not what I expected, but I could see what was going on here. Actually, I should have expected this from her. Either way, all systems engage for drama session number 2 or 1.5, just a tiny bit for now. Wait. You knew and you still played dumb. I turned my back to her, a classic move I haven't used for this scene. Not new, more of suspect. I was wrong when I thought you were hoping I'm not an Adumbri, I said in a deathly whisper. You were just hoping you're not the one who caused me to turn into one. Yes, she said softly. So, what was that about Johann checking? That was after you told me the truth the night we saved you from your condo, she said. I sighed, exaggeratedly slumping down. That should be enough. I was supposed to be meek and timid errand after all. Being forgiving would also allow me to hold more of her strings to pluck later. I understand. There's your sister, and now me. I can see why you wanted the truth to be that way. Okay, just that poke. I had to go back to information gathering because this was getting interesting. Before she could process that I was trying to guilt trip her, I said, how did you know I am an Adumbri? That's Johann again. While snooping through the files of the Eve raid, he found something about a wolf monster. And he also heard there was a lookout advisory for an Adumbri giant werewolf in this city circulated among the police. We have seen a wolf monster before. At the docks, I said. And you thought Red Hood was helping me like survive or something? Something like that. Besides your story that she helped you, Johann also found a witness statement from one of the customers at Eve that they saw someone that looked like Red Hood. Blanchette. Blanchette, yeah. Sorry. One more thing. Johann also scoured the files of your misadventures at Serenade Bazaar. That case was left to the city police because it is so much smaller compared to the Eve case, so Johann had an easier time hacking the police system to get to the records. A security camera footage from a bookstore captured you. You as in Erend. We thought that you guys were meeting. Turns out you're the same person. Johann was the one who wiped it, that's why the police never came to visit you even if you did encounter an Adumbri. Huh. If this secret organization didn't delete the video, then that means they don't know you're an Adumbri, that you're Blanchette. That's why I'm asking you now for help, Myra said. They whoever they may be they don't know your secret. It can be our trump card. I know this might be too much to ask for your help. I haven't made up for trying to kill you and turning you into an Adumbri, and now I'm asking for a favor. A really huge favor. It's okay if you don't want. I'll help. You will. Really? I don't have much to do anyway. I'm already an Adumbri. I don't believe in heaven or anything like that. I just want to do good deeds before the Adumbri completely takes over me. Just one last guilt-tripping stab, I couldn't help myself. We'll find a cure. Myra, the cure is with our enemy. I'm not sure how we'll get that. And I don't think I want to be cured. She fumbled her words, trying to think of a way to repay me. I said, I also have a favor to ask of you. Sure. Anything. I extended my hand to her. Teach me how to fight, how to use my strength, my powers. Help me get stronger and I'll help you find Kelsey. Myra shook my hand. Deal. Dean, you? Yes, Erend. It's me, she replied. She was already used to being referred to as Dean instead of her first name, Amber. At first, it was only Erend calling her that. Now, it was their entire Adumbri fighting group. She was starting to prefer being called Dean. Hello. Hello. Why aren't you replying to my texts? Dean asked Erend over the phone with a hint of chuckle to show it was just a light-hearted question. She knew she was becoming unreasonably intrusive as of late. I should have said something else. You're not in any trouble at the mall, aren't you? She added, making an opening for her friend to make a mom joke. It could sort of excuse her behavior. But Erend didn't. She said, Dean. Can't hear, very well signal. Hello, Erend. A spike of static made Dean wince. She wanted to tell Erend to go out and find better reception, but that was being incredibly bossy. Are you still at the mall? Where was she that the connection was this bad? What did you mall? Yeah, I'm mall. Waiting glasses. You're done with having your eyes checked, and now you're waiting for your glasses. How long? Dean bit her lip. Just tell me later when you're done, okay? We can have dinner together if you want, just a suggestion. Yeah, I'll back by dinner, Erend replied, misunderstanding her. Our class now. Dean stared at the sea of grass outside her car window, the sprawling Green Meadows Park. I have class right now, she said. I just stepped out to check on you because I was worried. A couple minutes of driving along the street bordering the park and she'd be at the entrance of Poblacion Verde Hills, 3 or 4 more minutes after that and she'd be home. We can later listen, class. Erend's voice was becoming less clear, the connection very choppy. Talk to you later then. Take care. After the beep of the ended call, Dean sighed. She reached over her left shoulder and massaged her back, around her left shoulder blade. When she was stressed, she had a bad habit of unconsciously raising her shoulders, resulting in gnawing pain as the tight muscles contracted. It rarely happened, but it was distractingly uncomfortable when it did. Accepting the artificial core and entering the world of Adumbry and core brings resulted in more stressful encounters. A very generous description of the life and death experiences she had and regularly too. But she expected she would no longer experience this pain even if she had become more tensed since then. Surely her regenerative powers would take care of it. Apparently, she was wrong. Or maybe her powers did heal the tense muscles, and this was something like phantom pain. Can it be psychological? In any case, she found she was less tense, hence less suffering, when Erend was around. We just have to protect Erend and keep her close, right Gabe? Dean said to her guardian angel. The name just popped in her head one day. Gabriel was a biblical angel, and Gabe was like a cute nickname version of it. We have to protect her no matter what, especially now that she hit the steering wheel in frustration, accidentally honking the horn, surprising herself. She also surprised a couple of kids skating on the sidewalk. One of them stumbled and crashed into the other. Slowing the car, she called out to them, "Sorry. Are you okay?" The kids waved at her to show there was no problem. She continued watching them, looking back as she drove on to make sure they were all right. Gabe floated into view and stared straight into her eyes. It was very rare it opened its eyes, even rarer it would meet her gaze. Its eyes were orbs of endless darkness. If she stared long enough, she knew she'd notice sprinkles of light, which would become a fountain of stars streaming forth from the darkness, as if endless galaxies were trapped inside them. The most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Hello, is something? Focus on driving. Oops, road safety first. Dean didn't need the power of foresight to know she was asking for an accident by not keeping her eyes on the road. Sure enough, a few yards ahead, a man walking several dogs inadvertently let go of one of the leashes. An excited black Labrador streaked across the road, right in front of her car, but she was able to brake in time. Phew. Thanks, Gabe, she said, observing her guardian angel with affection. She could have sworn it had grown bigger since it first manifested, with minute cracks branching across the surface of its egg-shaped body. Perhaps it was molting its hard ivory-colored exterior. The wings it held close to its body had more feathers now, and the feathers themselves grew about an inch longer. She couldn't explain it, she just knew Gabe would unfurl those blindingly white wings someday. Dean had an urge to touch them. I bet they are very fluffy. But she held back, remembering what happened the 2 times she did. To distract herself, she looked right through Gabe through not past. Its body was mind-bogglingly transparent and not at the same time at the park. She didn't forget to keep glancing on the road. There were curiously a lot of people at Green Meadows Park today. Joggers, children playing, people walking their pets, families having a picnic. If she had to guess, these were people avoiding the center of the commotion at downtown while trying to find a way to have a normal atmosphere despite the madness enveloping their city. Getting a dog would be nice. I'll ask Erend if she likes animals. Hello. Dean poked her head through the doorway. Everything was silent. She glanced at Gabe. It had become her habit every time she was about to enter a place. Her guardian angel just rotated in the air, its eyes tightly shut. Sis, are you home? She called, walking in with her shoulders dropped. Even if her sister was around, she wouldn't answer because she'd be in her room wearing headphones blaring classical violin music. Dean checked the wall clock by the entrance. Her sister wasn't usually home this early anyway or at all. The clock also told her she had plenty of time before her next class. Dean did go to university like she told Erend she would. However, her prior class was cancelled last minute because their professor was injured on his way to work. Many conflicting stories on what happened. The most believable was a roving gang of religious fanatics blocking the traffic, supposedly checking passing cars if there were any Adumbry inside, decided her professor wasn't human. Yes, this was the most believable. Given what was happening lately, she wouldn't be surprised if the more far-fetched stories were also true. So, there she was, hanging out with the few of her classmates who were present, having a relaxed time socializing even though her usual circle of friends didn't come to school, when the dean ordered all classes be moved online until further notice. They had no choice but to go home, ruining her plans of having a normal time with normal humans. I'm not normal, she reminded herself. And I'm not human anymore. But that didn't mean she didn't want it to feel normal sometimes, just like the people at Green Meadows Park. Speaking of normal. Dean ran upstairs, checking the rooms just to make sure no one else was here, before entering the closet in her own room. She had the primary bedroom. Her sister yielded it to her since she was barely home, with a huge walk-in closet. One of the cabinets had a false wall hiding a safe the size of a mini fridge behind it. Her sister didn't know or didn't care about this safe, and Dean was the only one who knew the security code. She had no use for it because she had no jewelry to put inside. Her mother was an avid collector of luxury accessories, but Dean and her sister didn't share that passion. Right now, the only thing inside of the safe was a sealed plastic bag containing dirty clothes, Erin's clothes the night she escaped her condo. "Oh my God," Dean said as she opened the plastic bag. It was absolutely foul, worse than gym clothes soaked in sweat cooped up in a bag for days. She had dried them under the sun before storing to lessen the smell, but it still reeked. "Gross," she muttered. "And sorry, Erin. I know you're not smelly." She held her breath as she examined the clothes. The shirt and shorts were dark blue, making it hard to know which of the many dried splotches were blood. Still, Dean tried her best to examine each one of them. Most were likely bodily fluids of monsters, causing the bad odor even if the clothes were already dry. There were many tears on the fabric, not just small holes. Some were a few inches long, which meant Erin was wounded that night, which also meant some of the dark patches were her dried blood. If she had these wounds on the parts of her body covered with clothes, she'd likely have wounds on her bare arms and legs too. It's all logical. The problem was Erin didn't have any wounds. None at all, not even a small bruise. Sensing something didn't add up, Dean hid Erin's dirty clothes and told her she threw them away. There was no way to explain the tears on the clothes while her best friend's skin remained unblemished. I don't think Erin was the type to wear fashionably ripped clothes. Dean stowed them inside the safe again, and filled the entire closet with clouds of perfume to get rid of the smell. She also opened all the doors and windows of the room to help air out the foul odor. She fetched her laptop, not for her online class, but to search for the optical shop Erin went to. She found it was on the second floor of the mall, so Erin shouldn't have any problems with reception unless the phone itself was defective. I don't think it was. I bought it just 4 months ago. And did Erin really need glasses? She acted like she did, squinting at small objects, printing out case notes in larger fonts, asking Dean for help reading small text. However, Dean got a glimpse of her at the police station, effortlessly filling out the forms. Was her eyesight healing too, just like the rest of her body? "This can't be happening," Dean said, clenching her fists. All those weird conversations between Erin and Johan, their reactions, everything made sense now. There was no need for Erin to drink the suppressor if she was a normal human. Johan didn't have to do anything if she was a normal human. But she's not human, that was the only explanation. When this suspicion first crawled in her mind, Dean's initial reaction was to assume Erin accepted an artificial core. She was hurt her best friend didn't tell her. She already promised she would protect her. There was no need for her to surrender her humanity too. But as she thought about it over the past couple of days, she realized Erin wouldn't just change her mind and accept the artificial core. If she did, Dario would take that into account in their planning. And Erin would have told her. She would ask for her support as she grappled with the changes in her body. This was something else. Something happened to Erin that night, the two MS attack that only she, Myra, and Johan knew. She is becoming an Adumbri. The two MS did something to Erin. And Dean wasn't there to protect her best friend. Dean wanted to scream in anger, but she instead gnashed her teeth. She dug her nails into her palms, cutting into her skin. Blood ran down the side of her hands. "Oh, no," she whispered, extending her arms so the blood wouldn't fall on her shirt. She rushed to the bathroom sink to wash it off. The cuts on her hands rapidly healed, probably the same thing that happened to Erin's wounds. Poor Erin. Dean had a theory on what happened. Myra and Johann rescued Erin from the men of the 2MS, but they were too late to prevent whatever experiment was done to her. She ended up becoming an Adumbri. The three of them decided to keep it a secret from the rest of the group because they were fighting the Adumbri. Adumbri were evil. Adumbri were the enemy. The people who let themselves get taken over by Adumbri were traitors to humanity. Everybody was taught this way when they were children. Erin will never confess to me. And part of that was because of her actions. Dean recalled she made a grand speech about doing her part in the fight against the Adumbri. Her best friend would understandably be ashamed to reveal she became an Adumbri even if it wasn't her fault. What could she do to make Erin reveal the truth? She didn't want to just confront Erin, it may drive her best friend away. Maybe she could approach Myra and Johann. Would they tell her, or hide it from her? Erin was probably with them right now. It made Dean feel a pang of jealousy. "I sure wish I'm wrong about this," she murmured as she walked to the guest room Erin was staying in. "Right to privacy and all that, I know what I'm doing is wrong," she admitted to herself as she combed through Erin's belongings. After each drawer she rummaged, she'd arrange everything back to their respective places. It didn't take her long because Erin didn't have much other than the clothes they bought yesterday, and most of them were still in the paper bags. "I'll help her fix her cabinet later," Dean decided, smiling at the thought of doing something normal. She didn't find anything interesting besides the certificates of Erin from the testing. These should prove Erin was normal, that was what anyone would think. But Dean had an inkling that Johann tampered with the test somehow. "A bookmark," she said, finding a piece of cardboard amongst the papers. It couldn't be Erin's. It might be bookmark of the owner of this house. The library downstairs had many books, and this could have been left by the owner or the previous lessees inside one of them. But Erin didn't have any books in this room. Dean took a picture of the bookmark, placed it back with Erin's certificates, and left the room. She still had 30 minutes until her next class, so she spent it browsing the internet for clues about the bookmark. Searching for the symbol on it yielded no results. Or rather, it had a lot of related images, but no exact match. The symbols that came up were connected to neocore Christianity. Unlike mainstream Christianity, the sects categorized under it did believe in the books of Enoch most only on the first book, so it seemed to be a good lead. "I'm looking for a church, organization, some kind of group," Dean said, "that believes in all the 3 books of Enoch as scripture, and uses this symbol." She zoomed in on the picture she took of the bookmark. There was a handwritten notation that seemed to cite a 4th book of Enoch. More browsing confirmed there were only 3 books. The number 4 was too different from 1, 2, or 3 for it to be just a handwriting mistake. She didn't give up on her search, continuing during her International Environmental Law elective class. She had been looking forward to the topic they were discussing today, environmental laws for areas previously ravaged by purple blooms, but she was so engrossed in learning more about the bookmark that she lowered the volume of her professor's lecture. Her efforts did pay off as she came upon a 23-year-old news article. It was just a screenshot saved in the blog of a guy who collected odd news articles, so she couldn't verify its authenticity. The source site was no longer up, and the news company shut down more than a decade ago. The piece was about a police raid on the headquarters of a civil rights activist group that was declared illegal because they lobbied for limited rights for Adumbri who weren't violent. Among the items retrieved in the raid was a Bible that included several unusual books, including the mysterious 4th book of Enoch. "That's it?" Dean said. "No other details?" She stared at the picture of the bookmark again. "Where did Erin get this?" Were a Dumbry trying to approach Erend and make her join them? If so, I'll kill them.